Ryan Cross stood alone in the shooting range at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Darkness surrounded him except for a single target downrange, illuminated by a pale work light that flickered twice before holding steady. The clock on the wall read 0530 hours. Most men would still be sleeping. Ryan had stopped sleeping well 3 years ago. He raised his sidearm, breathed out, fired 5 rounds in controlled succession. The reports echoed off concrete walls and died in the empty space behind him. He walked forward 20 paces and examined the target. 5 holes, tight grouping, center mass, all of them touching the same ragged circle where paper met cardboard backing. He returned to the firing line, reloaded, raised the weapon again. This time he whispered 3 names before pulling the trigger. Jackson, Martinez, Sullivan. 5 more rounds. Same grouping, same holes. The paper barely registered the new damage because there was nothing left to damage in that small circle of destruction. The overhead lights snapped on. Ryan did not turn around. He knew someone was watching, had known for the past 2 minutes from the slight change in air pressure when the door opened and the almost silent footfall of boots on concrete that belonged to a man who had spent 20 years learning how to move quietly. Hell of a way to start the morning. The voice came from behind him, deep, controlled. The voice of a man used to being heard the first time he spoke. Ryan set the pistol on the bench and turned. A figure stood in the doorway. Broad shoulders, graying hair cut high and tight, arms crossed over a chest that looked like it had been carved from something harder than muscle. The uniform said Marine. The eyes said something older and less forgiving. Old habit, Ryan said. Old habit from where? The man stepped into the light. Name tape read Briggs. Rank insignia showed Sergeant Major. Your file has more black ink than a redacted CIA brief. Ryan picked up his weapon and began field stripping it. Slide, barrel, recoil spring. Each piece placed on the bench with precision that came from repetition measured in years instead of months. Some things are above my pay grade to discuss, Sergeant Major. Briggs walked closer, stopped at the firing line and looked down range at the target. You do that every morning? Most mornings. The names you said, who are they? Ryan looked up from cleaning the barrel, met the other man's eyes and held them without blinking. Men who did not make it home. A long silence settled between them, the kind of silence that carries weight. Briggs nodded once. Be in the team room at 0800. We will see if you shoot as well with witnesses. He turned and walked toward the door, stopped, spoke without turning around. Cross, whatever you were before you came here, you are not that anymore. Here you are, just another operator trying to prove he belongs. Understood? Understood, Sergeant Major. The door closed. Ryan finished cleaning his weapon, reassembled it, holstered it, walked to the target and pulled it down, folded it carefully and placed it in his cargo pocket. He had a collection of these targets, 26 of them, one for each morning since he had received orders to report to Marine Special Operations Regiment, Team 3. One for each day he had spent preparing to walk into a place where no one knew his real name or his real mission or the real reason his file looked like someone had taken a marker to half his service record. He left the range and walked across the compound in the pre-dawn gray. The air smelled like salt water and pine trees and the particular combination of diesel fuel and gun oil that meant military base. Somewhere in the distance, a formation was running. He could hear the cadence caller and the responding chorus and the rhythmic pound of boots on pavement. It sounded like every military base he had ever been on, which was most of them. His barracks room was small and functional. Rack, locker, desk, window that looked out on the motor pool. He had lived in worse places, had lived in better places too, back when he had a house in Wilmington with a yard and a swing set and a daughter who would climb into his lap and ask him to read the same book 5 times in a row because repetition was how 7-year-olds made sense of the world. He opened his locker, reached for the photo he had prepared the night before. 4 by 6 inches, glossy finish. A little girl with dark hair pulled into a ponytail smiled at the camera while holding up a handmade sign. The sign read, "Come home safe, Daddy, love you to the stars." She had used purple marker for the letters and drawn stars around the edges. 3 of the stars had 5 points, 2 had 6. One had what appeared to be 9 points, but was probably meant to be 8 and had gotten away from her. Ryan taped the photo to the inside of his locker door, positioned it so he would see it first thing every morning when he opened the locker and last thing at night when he closed it. His hand lingered on the edge of the photo for just a moment. Then he closed the locker and went to get ready for 0800. The team room smelled like coffee and old sweat, and the cleaning solvent someone had used on the rifles stacked in the gun rack against the far wall. 6 men sat around a worn wooden table that had probably been in this room since before most of them were born. They looked up when Ryan entered. No one smiled. Briggs stood at the head of the table. "Gentlemen, this is Ryan Cross, 39 years old, lateral transfer from a unit we are not cleared to know about. He will be joining Team 3, effective immediately." He gestured to the empty chair. "Cross, have a seat." Ryan sat. The chair creaked under his weight. He set his coffee cup on the table and looked at each man in turn. Reading faces was a skill he had spent 15 years developing. These faces told him everything he needed to know about the next 4 weeks. The man directly across from him had eyes that evaluated without emotion. Lean build, compact, the stillness of someone who'd spent more time thinking than talking. Name tape said Kane. He nodded once at Ryan. No smile, just acknowledgement. To Kane's left sat a younger man, maybe 28, Hispanic features, female, corporal rank. She watched Ryan with open curiosity. Name tape said Santos. She was the only one who made eye contact and held it without aggression. Next to Santos was a man in his mid-30s with the kind of face that looked friendly even when it was not trying to. Broad smile, extended his hand across the table. "Welcome to the team, brother. Mark Collier. Glad to have you." Ryan shook his hand. Noted the grip, firm but not testing. The smile reached the eyes. This was either a genuinely friendly person or someone very good at pretending to be one. Ryan had met both types, had learned the hard way that telling the difference required time and observation. The fourth man did not offer his hand. Just watched Ryan with the flat assessment of someone deciding whether new equipment was worth the cost. Older than Collier, harder around the edges. Name tape read Garrett. He had the look of a man who had been doing this job long enough to stop being impressed by new faces. Briggs continued, "Cross comes to us with specialized experience we will no doubt benefit from. He will integrate into standard training rotations starting today. Questions?" Garrett spoke without raising his hand. "What kind of specialized experience?" "The kind that is above your clearance level, Staff Sergeant." Briggs did not look at Garrett when he said it. "Any other questions?" Silence. "Good. Cross, you will partner with Garrett for morning CQB drills. Santos, you have Overwatch. Kane, run comms. Call your demo setup. Move out in 20 minutes. Briggs left the room. The door closed behind him with a sound like a judgment being rendered. The team stood. Ryan stood with them. Collier clapped him on the shoulder. "Don't mind Garrett. He is like that with everyone new. Give it a week and he will be buying you beers." Ryan doubted that but said nothing. He followed the team to the equipment room and drew his training kit. Rifle, magazines, body armor. The rifle felt wrong the moment he picked it up. Not obviously wrong, just wrong in the way that came from years of handling weapons and knowing instantly when something was not seated properly or tightened correctly or balanced the way it should be. He checked the chamber. Clear. Checked the magazine well. Clear. Removed the bolt carrier group and examined the firing pin. It was loose. Not catastrophically loose, just loose enough that in a live fire situation with the stress of recoil and heat, it might fail to strike the primer with enough force to ignite the round. Or it might work fine. The uncertainty was the problem. Ryan reassembled the rifle. Said nothing. This was day one. Drawing attention to sabotaged equipment on day one would paint a target on his back that he could not afford yet. So he simply fixed it, tightened the pin, tested the action, confirmed function, loaded magazines, and moved to the range. The close quarters battle course was set up in an old warehouse. Plywood walls painted to look like rooms. Doorways marked with tape. Targets placed at varying distances and angles. Ryan had run courses like this more times than he could count. Had designed a few of them. Had written the doctrine for how to clear rooms in hostile environments where every corner could hide death and every door could be the last one you ever opened. Garrett took point. Ryan followed. They moved through the first room in silence. Garrett called corners. Ryan confirmed. They flowed around each other with the practiced ease of professionals who did not need to like each other to work together. Third room, Garrett went left. Ryan went right. The target appeared in Ryan's sector. He raised his rifle, pulled the trigger. Click. No report, no recoil. The firing pin struck the primer, but the round did not fire. Misfire. In a real engagement, this was the moment you died. Garrett spun. In this scenario, the enemy that should have been dead was now shooting back. Garrett fired twice. Hit the target, called clear in a voice that carried judgment like a stone. Briggs' voice came over the loudspeaker. Cease fire. Cross. Equipment failure is operator failure. You just got your partner killed. Explain. Ryan cleared his weapon, ejected the magazine, cycled the action and caught the unspent round as it ejected. Examined the primer. Light strike. Exactly what a loose firing pin would produce. He held up the round so Briggs could see it through the observation window. Firing pin was not properly seated, Sergeant Major. I corrected it before the drill, but the vibration from movement must have loosened it again. I will tighten it and run the drill again. You will sit the rest of this drill out and think about proper equipment maintenance. Briggs turned away from the window. Ryan Field stripped his rifle in the middle of the course, removed the firing pin, examined it under the overhead lights. The retaining pin had been deliberately loosened. Not removed, just backed off enough to cause exactly the kind of intermittent failure that would be hard to diagnose and easy to blame on operator error. Someone had touched his rifle between the equipment room and the range. Someone had sabotaged it with enough skill that most operators would not notice until it was too late. He tightened the pin, reassembled the rifle, cycled the action 20 times and checked the pin after each cycle. It held. He set the rifle down and watched the rest of the team finish the course. Kane watched him watching. Their eyes met. Kane glanced at the rifle, then at Ryan's hands, then back at Ryan's face. A message passed between them without words. Kane had seen something. Kane knew something. Kane was filing it away for later. The drill ended. The team moved back to the equipment room to clean weapons and store gear. Ryan took his time, cleaned every part, checked every function. When he was done, the rifle was in better condition than it had been when he drew it. He returned it to the armory and walked back to his barracks. It was 1900 hours. He had 14 hours before the next training cycle. He sat on his rack and pulled out his phone, dialed the number he had memorized but never saved in contacts. It rang twice. Hello? His mother's voice, tired but warm, the voice of a woman who had raised a Marine and knew what it meant to wait by the phone. Mom, it is Ryan. Can I talk to Sophie? She has been waiting all day. Hold on. Sounds of the phone changing hands. Background noise of a television. Then a child's voice, slightly breathless, always slightly breathless, like she had been running towards something important. Daddy! Hey, sweetheart. Ryan closed his eyes and let her voice fill up the empty spaces in his chest. Are you okay? She always asked that first. 7 years old, and she had learned to lead with the question that mattered most. Ryan wondered what that said about the life she had lived so far, and whether he had failed her by teaching her to worry before she taught herself to hope. I am okay, baby. Just wanted to hear your voice. I made something for you today. Yeah? What did you make? A guardian angel for art class. Mrs. Patterson said guardian angels watch over people, so I made one that looks like you. Ryan opened his eyes, stared at the ceiling. Sweetheart, I am just your dad. Dads can be guardian angels too. When are you coming home? Soon, I promise. You always keep your promises. Always, Ryan said. He meant it. Had meant it every time he said it, even the times when keeping it had cost him more than he thought he could afford to pay. They talked for 10 more minutes. She told him about school, about her friend Jessica, who had gotten a new bike, about the book she was reading, about the stars she could see from her bedroom window at Grandma's house. Ryan listened and made the right sounds at the right times and tried not to think about all the nights he had missed and all the nights still coming. When they hung up, he sat in the dark for a long time. Then he pulled a small notebook from his cargo pocket and wrote the date in 3 words. Day 1. Equipment sabotage. Firing pin. He closed the notebook and put it back in his pocket and lay down on his rack and stared at the ceiling until exhaustion finally pulled him under. At 2200 hours, his phone buzzed. Text message, unknown number. Beach Access Road, 20 minutes. Come alone. No signature. But Ryan knew who sent it. There was only one person on this base who would have his number and the operational security awareness to use it carefully. He dressed in civilian clothes, jeans, dark jacket, running shoes, left the base through the main gate and walked 3 blocks to where the road turned toward the ocean. The air was cold and clean and smelled like salt. No moon, Just stars and darkness and the sound of waves hitting sand somewhere beyond the dunes. A figure stood near a wooden bench that faced the water, lean build, hands in pockets, watching the horizon like there was something out there worth seeing. Ryan approached, stopped 10 feet away. "You have a habit of dramatic meeting locations, Kane." The figure turned. David Kane had the kind of face that looked the same in any light. Unremarkable, forgettable. The perfect face for someone in whose job was to see without being seen. "I know who you are, Cross," he paused. "Or should I say ghost?" Ryan's hand moved toward his sidearm. Not drawing, just ready. Kane raised both hands. "Easy. I am not your enemy. I was NSA liaison to JSOC 3 years ago. Operation Nightfall. I saw the after-action reports before they were classified. 8 operators went into that compound in Yemen. 1 came back." Ryan kept his hand near his weapon. "What do you want?" "To help, because Nightfall was not random bad luck. Someone fed that intel to the enemy, and whoever did it is still operating." The waves crashed. The sound filled the silence between them. Ryan studied Kane's face. Looked for the tells, the micro-expressions that separated truth from deception. Found nothing but steady eyes and the patience of someone who knew this conversation was going to happen one way or another. "Why would NSA care about Marine Raider operations?" Ryan asked. "Because the mole is not just selling to terrorists. They are selling to a foreign state actor. China or Russia. We do not know which yet. That is above my clearance." Kane pulled a tablet from his jacket, tapped the screen, turned it to show Ryan. 3 Marine Raider operations compromised in 2 years. Minimal casualties but perfect enemy timing. Pattern matches Nightfall. Ryan looked at the data, dates, locations, casualty reports, mission outcomes. All of it was familiar. All of it was classified. "How did you get this?" "I volunteered for this team 6 months ago. I have been running signals intelligence, tracking communication patterns." Kane pulled the tablet back. "You are here to find the mole. I am here to help you do it." Ryan lowered his hand from his weapon. "If I was here to find a mole, I would not confirm that to someone I met 20 minutes ago on a dark beach. No, you would do exactly what you are doing. Assess the threat, calculate the risk, decide if the asset is worth recruiting." Kane smiled without warmth. "I read your psychological profile. Pattern recognition, strategic patience, operational ruthlessness when required. You are good at what you do, Ghost, but you cannot do it alone. Not this time." "What makes you think I need help?" "Because someone loosened the firing pin in your rifle this morning. And if I noticed, someone else noticed too. You have maybe 2 weeks before whoever is running interference figures out you are not just another transfer. 2 weeks to identify the mole and neutralize the threat." Kane put the tablet away. "Or you end up like your team in Yemen, dead in a room that was supposed to be safe." Ryan watched the ocean, thought about Jackson, about Martinez, about Sullivan, about the 5 others whose names he whispered every morning in the dark. "If I was looking for help, what would you want in return?" "The same thing you want. Justice. And maybe a chance to stop the next Nightfall before it happens." "Justice and prevention. Those are not the same thing." "No," Kane agreed, "but they are close enough for government work." Ryan turned to leave, stopped. "The firing pin. Who did you see near my rifle?" "Collier, but he was helping carry equipment. Could have been coincidental contact." Or not." "Or not," Kane confirmed. Ryan walked back toward the base. Behind him, Kane called out one more thing. "Ghost, whatever happens in the next 4 weeks, remember you are not alone this time. That matters." Ryan did not turn around, did not acknowledge, just kept walking. But he heard it, and in the small locked room where he kept the things that still hurt, he filed it away next to Sophie's voice and the promise he had made to come home. The next 2 weeks moved like water over stone. Steady, relentless, wearing away at the surface without seeming to change anything fundamental. Ryan trained, ran drills, cleaned weapons, ate meals in silence while the team talked around him like he was furniture that had been placed in the room without consultation and would be tolerated until someone decided to move it. The incidents continued. Small things. His gear rearranged, his locker opened and searched. Twice he found his boots unlaced before morning formation. Once he discovered his body armor had been adjusted so the plates sat wrong and would leave gaps in coverage during live fire exercises. Each time he fixed it. Each time he said nothing. Each time Kane watched from across the room with eyes that cataloged everything and forgot nothing. Briggs ran the team like a man conducting an orchestra, where every instrument was a weapon and every performance was a test. He pushed them through urban assault drills and long-range reconnaissance scenarios and close-quarters combat simulations that started in darkness and ended in chaos. Ryan performed well, not well enough to stand out, not poorly enough to justify removal, exactly well enough to be useful and exactly unremarkable enough to be ignored. Garrett treated him with professional coldness, not hostile, just absent of warmth. Like Ryan was a piece of equipment that might prove useful or might break, and either outcome was equally acceptable. Santos was different. She watched him with curiosity instead of suspicion, asked him questions during breaks. Where did you serve before this? How long have you been in? Do you have family? Ryan answered the safe questions and deflected the dangerous ones, and noticed that she had a younger brother who wanted to be a Marine and a father who had served in the First Gulf War, and a way of seeing people that most operators train themselves out of, because seeing people as people instead of assets made the job harder. Collier remained friendly, too friendly, the kind of friendly that felt rehearsed. He offered coffee, offered advice, offered to help Ryan get oriented to the team's procedures and protocols. Ryan accepted the coffee, declined the advice, watched Collier's hands whenever they were near his equipment. On the morning of day 14, Ryan opened his locker and found that someone had been inside again. His extra uniforms had been moved, his personal items had been disturbed, and the photograph of Sophie had been taken down from where he had taped it to the door. It was lying on the shelf, face down. Ryan picked it up and turned it over. Someone had written on it with black marker. The words were simple and direct and designed to cut. She deserves better than a washed-up ghost. Below that, in smaller letters, go home before you get someone killed, again. Ryan stared at the photograph, at his daughter's smile, at the purple stars she had drawn with such care, at the marker that had violated both. His hands did not shake, his breathing did not change, but something inside him that had been held in place by discipline and patience and the professional requirement to maintain cover shifted into a different configuration. Something harder. Something that had been filed down by 3 years of survivor's guilt and refined by the specific kind of rage that comes from watching good men die for bad reasons. He placed the photograph carefully in his breast pocket, over his heart, closed his locker, walked to the team room where he knew Briggs and Garrett and Collier would be having morning coffee before the training brief. They looked up when he entered. Briggs set down his cup. Cross, you are early. Sergeant Major, I need to address something with the team. Ryan's voice was calm, flat, the voice of a man who had run out of patience but had not yet run out of control. What is it? Ryan pulled the photograph from his pocket, set it on the table, face up, so everyone could see what had been written on it. Whoever touched my daughter's photo, you crossed a line. Garrett leaned forward, looked at the photo, sat back, said nothing. Collier picked it up, read it, set it down. That is messed up, man. I am sorry. Briggs picked it up last, examined it. His jaw tightened. That is a serious accusation, Cross. It is a fact, Sergeant Major. And here is another fact. I have been here 2 weeks. 2 weeks of equipment, failures and accidents, and now this. So here is how it ends. Ryan looked at each of them in turn. The hazing stops today, or I file a formal Inspector General complaint. Your choice. Briggs stood. The movement was not aggressive, just large. The kind of presence that filled a room and pushed against the walls. You think you can threaten me? No, sir. I am giving you an opportunity to lead your team properly. Because whatever test you think you are running, I am not interested. I am here to do a job. Let me do it or explain to the colonel why you are obstructing a lateral transfer with a specialized skill set that was requested by JSOC. The room went quiet. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Garrett watched without expression. Collier looked uncomfortable. Kane appeared in the doorway. He must have heard the confrontation from the hallway. He said nothing, just leaned against the frame and observed. Briggs stepped closer to Ryan. They were the same height, the same build, the same kind of hard that came from the same kind of life. You have sand, Cross, I will give you that. But sand does not make you one of us. I am not trying to be one of you, Sergeant Major. I am trying to do my job. If you have a problem with my qualifications, take it up with the chain of command. If you have a problem with me personally, we can settle that off base and off duty. But if you have a problem with my daughter's photograph being in my locker, that stops now. Briggs held his eyes for a long moment. Then he picked up the photograph, looked at it again, at Sophie's smile, at the marker that had defaced it. Something shifted in his expression. Not softening, just recalculation. Whoever did this crossed a line, I agree. But that does not change the fact that you are still unproven, still an unknown quantity, still someone we cannot fully trust until you earn it. Fair enough, Ryan said. Then let me earn it. Collier cleared his throat. Look, maybe we all just ease up. Cross is right. Maybe we push too hard. Briggs turned to Collier, studied him. Maybe. He turned back to Ryan. You want to earn trust? Fine. We have a mission brief in 72 hours. Yemen. High-value target. You will be part of the planning cell. Show me you can think like an operator and not just shoot like one. Show me you can contribute to this team's success instead of being a liability. Do that and we will revisit this conversation. Ryan picked up the photograph, put it back in his pocket. Understood, Sergeant Major. He left the team room, walked back to his barracks, sat on his rack and pulled out his phone. Started to call Sophie. Stopped. It was 700. She would be at school. He would have to wait until evening. So he sat there with the phone in his hand and the photograph in his pocket and the knowledge that somewhere on this base, someone had just made this personal in a way that could not be unmade. At 1400 hours, Kane found him in the armory. That was either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. Briggs respects directness, but he does not forget challenges to his authority. Kane checked to make sure they were alone. The mission brief, Yemen, it is not random. I know. How much do you know? Ryan looked up from the rifle he was cleaning. Enough to know that someone is testing whether I recognize the terrain. Enough to know that the mission profile will match Nightfall close enough to trigger recognition. Enough to know that whoever is running this operation wants to see how I react when I am back in the same country where I lost my team. Kane nodded slowly. The target is a terrorist facilitator, but the compound is less than 40 kilometers from where Nightfall went wrong. That is not coincidence. No, it is bait. For you or for the mole? Ryan resumed cleaning his rifle. Maybe both. The 72 hours passed like the approach to a firefight. Time compressed and expanded in strange ways. Minutes felt like hours during the waiting. Hours felt like minutes during the preparation. Ryan studied maps, reviewed intelligence briefs, memorized terrain features and road networks and the locations of known hostile forces. He had done this before. Had done exactly this before. 3 years ago in a different briefing room with different faces but the same maps and the same careful evaluation of approach routes and exfiltration points and all the small decisions that added up to men living or dying. The brief was scheduled for 0900 in the operations center. Ryan arrived at 0855. The rest of the team was already there. Briggs stood at the head of the table. A large map of Yemen covered the wall behind him. Red marks indicated enemy positions. Blue marks indicated friendly forces. A black star marked the target compound. Ryan looked at the map and felt something cold settle in his stomach. He knew that compound, had studied it 3 years ago, had helped build the intelligence package that was supposed to ensure success, had watched that intelligence turn to lies when the ambush came and the bullets started flying and his teammates started dying. A door opened. Colonel Harris entered. Tall, graying hair, confident walk. The kind of officer who had spent enough time in the field to know what he was asking of his men and enough time behind a desk to know how to ask it. Gentlemen, be seated. They sat. Harris moved to the map. 4 days ago, Signals Intelligence identified a high-value target operating out of this compound in northern Yemen. Terrorist facilitator. Moves money and weapons for Al-Qaeda-affiliated groups. CIA wants him captured for interrogation. We have a 72-hour window before he moves to a new location. This is our chance. Briggs stood. Standard approaches north route, heavy vehicle support, fast insertion, secure the target, extract before enemy quick reaction force can respond. He traced the route on the map with his finger. Ryan studied the map, counted the seconds, waited. Harris looked around the table. Questions? Concerns? Ryan raised his hand. Sir, north route exposes us for 400 meters in open terrain. If enemy has any intelligence we are coming, that is a kill zone. The room shifted. All eyes turned to Ryan. Briggs' face showed nothing, but his eyes showed everything. This was the test. This was the moment. Explain, Harris said. Ryan stood, walked to the map. Enemy has high ground here and here. North route gives them enfilade fire for the entire approach. We would be exposed from two angles with no cover and no concealment. What is your recommendation? Briggs asked. His voice was carefully neutral. East approach through the Wadi system. Ryan traced an alternate route. Longer by 40 minutes, but provides defilade coverage. We use the terrain instead of fighting it. Enemy expects a vehicle approach on roads. We move on foot through the dead space and come up on the compound from an unexpected angle. Garrett spoke up. That adds 40 minutes to the operation. Time is a resource we do not waste. Time is less valuable than lives, Staff Sergeant. If we take the north route and walk into an ambush, we lose both. Briggs crossed his arms. How do you know this terrain, Cross? Your file does not show Yemen deployments. The room went quiet. This was the real question, the one that mattered. Ryan looked at Briggs, then at Harris, then back at the map. I have operated in similar terrain, Sergeant Major. The principles are the same regardless of location. Similar is not the same as identical. No, sir, but tactical analysis does not require prior boots on ground. It requires understanding terrain, enemy capabilities, and risk assessment, all of which point to the east approach as the better option. Harris studied the map, studied Ryan, made a decision. We use Cross's route, plan accordingly, brief the team on the new approach. Wheels up in 48 hours. He left the room. Briggs remained standing at the map. The rest of the team filed out. Only Ryan and Briggs and Kane remained. Briggs turned to Ryan. That was either very good tactical analysis or you have been to Yemen before and you are lying about it. I have never lied to you, Sergeant Major. No, you have just avoided answering questions. That is not the same as honesty. It is the best I can offer given the classification level of my previous work. Briggs nodded slowly. Fair enough. But Cross, understand something. In 48 hours, we are going into hostile territory together. If there is anything about your background that could compromise this mission or this team, now is the time to tell me. Ryan thought about Nightfall, about Jackson and Martinez and Sullivan, about the moment the ambush started and the world turned to fire and noise, about dragging wounded men toward an exit that kept getting farther away, about the voice on the radio ordering him to extract alone, about leaving them behind. There is nothing that will compromise the mission, Sergeant Major. You have my word. Your word. Briggs picked up his coffee cup. I guess we will find out what that is worth. He left. Kane waited until the door closed. You should have told him. Told him what? That I was there 3 years ago? That the same intelligence source we are using now is the same one that got my team killed then? That this whole mission feels like someone is running the same play expecting a different outcome? Yes, all of that. Ryan shook his head. If I tell him that, he pulls me from the mission. If he pulls me from the mission, I cannot protect the team when the ambush comes. And it will come, Kane. Someone will signal ahead. Someone will tell the enemy we are coming and which route we are taking, just like last time. Then we stop them before they signal. We do not know who they are yet. Then we find out in the next 48 hours. Ryan looked at the map one more time, at the black star marking the compound, at the route he had just proposed, at the terrain that would either save them or kill them, depending on variables he could not control and enemies he could not see. 48 hours, he said, and then we find out if I am still as good at this as I used to be. That night he called Sophie. She answered on the third ring, background noise of television and his mother cooking dinner. Sophie's voice bright and happy and completely unaware that her father was about to deploy to the same country where he had almost died 3 years ago. Daddy, guess what happened at school today? What happened, sweetheart? We had a science fair, and I made a volcano, and it actually erupted. Mrs. Patterson said it was the best one in the whole class. Ryan smiled. First real smile in 2 weeks. That is amazing, baby. I wish I could have been there to see it. When are you coming home? I miss you. Soon. I have to go on a trip for work, but I will be home soon. I promise. You always keep your promises. Always. Daddy? Yes, sweetheart. Be safe, okay? I made you a guardian angel, remember? So you have to be safe because guardian angels watch over people and you are my guardian angel. Ryan closed his eyes, leaned back against the wall. I will be safe, and you are my guardian angel too. You keep me safe just by being you. I love you to the stars, Daddy. I love you to the stars and back, Sophie. Now go eat your dinner and be good for Grandma." They hung up. Ryan sat in the dark and listened to the sounds of the base at night. Distant voices, vehicle engines. The particular silence that came from thousands of people living in close proximity, but each alone with their thoughts. He pulled the photograph from his pocket, looked at Sophie's face, at the marker someone had used to deface it, at the purple stars she had drawn around the edges. He had made a promise to come home, had made that promise to a 7-year-old girl who believed guardian angels were real and that her father was one of them. He intended to keep that promise, whatever it took, whoever stood in the way. At 400 the morning of deployment, Ryan was back in the shooting range. Same target, same distance, same ritual. 5 rounds, center mass, 3 names, Jackson, Martinez, Sullivan. 5 more rounds, same holes. Then he added 2 more names. 2 men he had not allowed himself to remember because remembering them meant accepting they were gone. Chen, Williams. He stared at the target for a long time. Then he pulled it down and folded it carefully and put it in his cargo pocket with all the others. This would be the last one. Whether he came back from Yemen or not, this was the last morning he would spend shooting at targets in the dark and whispering names of dead men. Either he would find the mole and stop the next nightfall, or he would become another name someone else whispered in the dark. Either way, the ritual was ending. The team assembled in the motor pool at 0600, gear staged, weapons checked, everyone moving through pre-deployment procedures with the practiced efficiency of professionals who had done this enough times that thinking about it was unnecessary. Ryan loaded his equipment, verified his rifle. This time the firing pin was tight. This time everything functioned perfectly. Someone wanted him to make it to Yemen. Someone wanted him in that compound when the trap sprang. Briggs walked the line, checked each operator, stopped at Ryan. "Cross, you ready?" "Yes, Sergeant Major." "Your route better be as good as you say it is." "It is. For all our sakes, I hope you are right." They loaded into vehicles. Kane sat next to Ryan, leaned close, whispered. "Encrypted signal just went out from base 90 seconds ago. Someone reported our departure time en route." Ryan felt his blood go cold. "How long ago?" 90 seconds. "We are compromised before we even cross the border." Ryan looked back at the other vehicle. Could see Briggs' profile through the window. Could see Collier and Garrett. One of them had just sold them out. One of them had just sent a signal that would tell the enemy exactly when and where they were coming. Just like Nightfall. Just like 3 years ago. "Who sent it?" Ryan asked. "I cannot trace it yet, but it came from inside the compound. Someone on this base." The vehicles started moving, pulling out of the motor pool, heading toward the main gate in the airfield, and the transport that would carry them across the ocean to a country that had already taken too much from Ryan and was preparing to ask for more. Kane pulled out his tablet, worked in silence for 30 seconds, then stopped. Looked at Ryan with eyes that had gone flat and cold. "Cross, there is something else. The signal was not just coordinates. It was an authentication code, Old J SOC protocol." Ryan knew what was coming before Kane said it. Had known since the moment they pulled out of the motor pool. Had known since Briggs called to him by the wrong name in that first confrontation. Had known since he saw the map of Yemen with the black star marking a compound 40 kilometers from where his team had died. "What code?" Ryan asked anyway. Because confirmation mattered. Because knowing and proving were different things. Kane turned the tablet so Ryan could see the screen. 4 words in a code that only 8 people had ever known. 7 of them were dead. That left Ryan. And one other possibility that made his chest tight and his hands cold and his mind flash back to a burning compound and teammates screaming and a voice on the radio that he had trusted right up until the moment that trust killed everyone around him. The code word was simple, elegant, impossible. Shepard. The vehicles drove through the gate and turned toward the airfield, and Ryan sat very still while his world rearranged itself around a truth he had spent 3 years trying to find. Someone had used the authentication code from Operation Nightfall. Someone who should not exist. Someone who was either a ghost or a traitor, or something worse than both. Ryan looked at Kane. Kane looked back. Between them, the unspoken question hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had never been properly extinguished. If Shepard was active again, if that code was back in play, then Operation Nightfall had never really ended. It had just been waiting. And now, somehow, Ryan Cross was about to walk back into the same trap that had killed his team 3 years ago. Except this time he knew it was a trap. This time he was not going in blind. This time he had 48 hours to figure out who was running Shepherd Protocol and why they wanted him back in Yemen badly enough to compromise an entire Marine raider operation. The plane lifted off. Ryan closed his eyes and felt the wheels leave the ground and the familiar sensation of gravity loosening its hold. He thought about Sophie's guardian angel, about promises made to 7-year-olds, about men who did not make it home, about the names he whispered in the dark. And he thought about Shepherd, about a code word that should have died in a burning compound but was somehow still alive and still hunting, still waiting for Ryan Cross to make the same mistake twice. He was not going to make that mistake, not this time. This time he was going to find Shepherd, going to stop whoever was using that code to destroy good men, going to make sure that the next time he whispered names in the dark, they were the names of enemies who had learned too late that some ghosts do not stay buried. Some ghosts come back, and when they do, they bring justice with them. The transport climbed through thin clouds toward a destination that Ryan had sworn he would never see again. Below, the American coastline fell away. Ahead, somewhere across an ocean and a desert and 3 years of survivor guilt, Yemen waited. And in Yemen, in a compound marked with a black star on a map, the truth about Shepherd and Nightfall and everything Ryan had lost was waiting to be found. He opened his eyes, looked at Kane, said 2 words that carried the weight of 3 years and 8 dead operators and 1 promise made to a little girl who still believed her father was a guardian angel. Find them, Kane nodded, bent over his tablet, started working. The hunt was on. The transport aircraft climbed through darkness over the Atlantic. Ryan Cross sat in silence among shadows and the low vibration of engines that had carried countless operators toward countless wars. The cabin smelled like fuel and gun oil and the particular staleness of recycled air that tasted like metal in the back of your throat. Around him, the team settled into the practiced stillness of professionals who knew that rest before action was not a luxury but a tactical requirement. Kane worked his tablet 3 seats away. The screen glow painted his face in blues and whites that made him look like a ghost studying the coordinates of other ghosts. Every few minutes he would glance at Ryan. Their eyes would meet. Information would pass between them without words. The hunt for Shepherd continued even at 30,000 feet above an ocean that separated them from answers that waited in desert sand and mountain stone. Ryan pulled out his phone. No signal this far from land, but the photos did not need signal. He scrolled to the one he kept in a locked folder. Sophie at her last birthday party, purple dress, chocolate cake, gap-toothed smile that could break a man's heart or put it back together depending on whether you were leaving or coming home. He had been leaving that day. Had made it to the party for 2 hours before a call came through that required immediate response. She had understood. 7 years old, and she already understood that Daddy's job meant missing things. That understanding hurt worse than if she had cried. He put the phone away, leaned back against the webbing, closed his eyes, let his mind do what it always did before operations. Ran through scenarios, calculated probabilities, built mental maps of terrain he had studied and terrain he remembered from 3 years ago when he had been a different person with a different name operating under different rules that had gotten 7 good men killed. The rules were different now. This time he knew it was a trap. This time he had Kane watching his back and feeding him intelligence. This time he was not walking in blind with trust in a system that had already proven it could be compromised. This time he was the hunter instead of the prey. But hunters could still be hunted, and somewhere in the darkness ahead, Shepherd was waiting. The plane touched down at a forward operating base in Saudi Arabia 18 hours after leaving North Carolina. The landing was rough. Military transports did not prioritize passenger comfort. They prioritized getting steel and flesh from point A to point B, and everything else was secondary. Ryan felt his stomach drop as wheels hit runway and the aircraft shuddered and engines screamed in reverse thrust. They unloaded in pre-dawn gray. The air was different here. Dry, hot even before the sun finished rising. Smelled like diesel and dust and the faint electrical charge that came from too much military equipment running in too small a space. The base sprawled across flat land that stretched to horizons marked by nothing except more flat land. In the distance, mountains rose like broken teeth against a sky that was turning from black to deep purple to the washed-out blue that meant another day of heat was coming. Briggs assembled the team near a convoy of vehicles that had seen better years and harder service. 2 trucks, Local make. Paint faded. Doors that closed with sounds that suggested maintenance was a suggestion rather than a requirement. Perfect for blending into local traffic. Perfect for not drawing attention from anyone watching roads for American military vehicles. Listen up. Briggs' voice cut through the morning like a blade. We cross into Yemen in 90 minutes. From that point forward, we are off book. No air support, no quick reaction force closer than 40 minutes. If things go wrong, we handle it ourselves or we do not handle it at all. Clear? The team responded with nods. Professionals did not waste words on questions that had already been answered. Briggs continued, Cross, you are on navigation. Kane, signals intelligence. Santos, Overwatch. Garrett, weapons. Collier, demo and breach. I run tactical command. We move as a supply convoy. We speak Arabic if stopped. We do not engage unless engaged. The mission is to reach the compound, secure the target, and extract. Everything else is noise. Ryan checked his rifle one more time. This time the firing pin was perfect. This time someone wanted him to make it to Yemen alive. The question was why. The answer waited somewhere in the desert ahead. They loaded into vehicles. Ryan took the passenger seat of the lead truck. The driver was a local contractor named Yusuf, 50 years old, face like weathered stone, hands that knew steering wheels and weapons with equal familiarity. He nodded once at Ryan and said nothing. Men who survived in this work learned when to talk and when to let silence do the communicating. The convoy pulled out. Behind them, the base grew smaller in mirrors that showed everything in reverse. Ahead, the border crossing waited, and beyond that, Yemen, country of mountains and tribes and wars that had been going on since before Ryan was born and would probably continue long after he was gone. Country where he had lost everything 3 years ago and was now returning to find out if anything could be recovered from the ashes. Kane's voice came through the earpiece, quiet, urgent. Cross, we have a problem. Ryan keyed his radio. Talk to me. Second transmission just went out. Same encryption, same protocol, Shepard authentication. When? 4 minutes ago. After we loaded vehicles, but before we crossed the wire. Ryan looked in the side mirror or could see the second truck following at proper interval. Could see shapes of teammates through dusty windows. One of them had just sent a signal. One of them had just told the enemy which vehicles to watch for and which route to expect, and exactly when to spring whatever trap they had prepared. Can you trace the source? Ryan asked. Working on it. But Cross, here is what all worries me. The first transmission went out from base before we deployed. This second one is from the convoy. Whoever is running Shepard protocol has access to real-time updates. They are not just feeding intelligence. They are managing an active operation. Ryan absorbed this, looked at Yusuf. The driver kept his eyes on the road. Either he did not speak English or he was very good at pretending. Either way, Ryan made a mental note to assume nothing. Keep tracking it, Ryan said. And Kane, when we get to the border, stay close. If things go wrong, I need your eyes on the team. Copy that. The border crossing appeared as a cluster of buildings and concrete barriers, and armed men in mismatched uniforms who represented some faction or another in a country where factions change allegiance, like weather change seasons. The line of vehicles waiting to cross stretched for a quarter mile. Civilian trucks, commercial vans, the occasional passenger car that looked like it had survived 3 wars and was prepared to survive 3 more. Briggs' voice on radio. All call signs, we are mixing into civilian traffic. No tactical talk on open channels. We are supply haulers moving medical equipment to a clinic in Saada. That is the story. Everyone stay in character. Ryan watched the checkpoint ahead, counted the guards, noted their positions, marked the locations of weapons and cover and angles of fire. Old habits, the kind that kept you alive when situations deteriorated from routine to critical in the time it took to recognize a threat and respond to it. Their truck reached the checkpoint. A guard approached. Young, maybe 25. Kalashnikov slung across his back, eyes that evaluated without warmth. He spoke in Arabic, asked for papers. Yusuf handed over documents. Forged but high quality, the kind that would pass inspection unless the inspector knew exactly what to look for. The guard examined them, looked at Yusuf, looked at Ryan, spoke again in Arabic. Ryan understood every word. The guard was asking why an American was in a supply truck heading into northern Yemen, where Americans were not particularly welcome, and supply trucks were often cover for things that had nothing to do with medical clinics. Ryan responded in Arabic. accent perfect, dialect specific to this region. I am a medical equipment specialist. The clinic requested someone who knows how to maintain the machines we are delivering. I volunteered because I have worked in this region before and I respect the people here. The guard studied him. Ryan held his gaze. Not challenging, not submissive, just the steady look of a man who had nothing to hide and was prepared to wait as long as necessary for that truth to be recognized. The guard said something to Yusuf. Yusuf responded, a brief exchange. The guard waved them through. They drove across the border into Yemen. Behind them, the second truck followed. No incidents, no delays, just two supply vehicles joining the flow of traffic that moved through this checkpoint every day carrying goods and people and secrets that would never appear in any official record. Kane's voice. That was impressive. Ryan kept his eyes on the road. What was? You're Arabic. That was not basic language training. That was operational fluency. I have had practice. Where? Places that do not exist in any file you have access to. A pause, then Kane said, the mole just transmitted again. Third signal, they are updating enemy forces with our current position. Ryan felt his jaw tighten. 3 transmissions. Before deployment, after loading, after crossing border, someone was running a very tight operational timeline. Someone wanted the enemy to know exactly where this team was at every stage of movement. Someone was making sure that when the trap came, it came at the exact right moment with the exact right force. We need to identify the source, Ryan said. I am trying, but the encryption is military grade and the routing is bouncing through servers in 4 countries. Whoever set this up knew what they were doing. Keep trying. The convoy drove deeper into Yemen. The terrain changed from flat desert to rolling hills to the beginning of mountains that rose like walls against a sky that had gone from blue to white with heat. The road deteriorated. Pavement gave way to gravel, gave way to dirt that had been packed hard by years of traffic and would turn to mud with the first rain. They passed through villages, small collections of buildings that clung to hillsides like they were afraid of falling. Children watched from doorways. Old men sat in shade and smoked and talked about things that old men everywhere talked about when they had seen enough years to know that some things never changed, no matter who was fighting whom or why. 4 hours into Yemen, Ryan called for a stop. They pulled off the road into a wadi that provided cover from aerial observation and concealment from anyone watching the road. The team dismounted, stretched, checked equipment, spoke in low voices about things that had nothing to do with the mission, because sometimes talking about nothing was how you held on to the normal parts of yourself that remembered there was a world beyond the next firefight. Kane found Ryan near the rear vehicle. I traced the source. Ryan turned. Who? The transmissions are coming from Collier's sat phone. Ryan looked across the wadi to where Mark Collier sat on a rock drinking water and talking to Santos. The friendly one. The one who had welcomed Ryan on day 1. The one who had seemed genuinely interested in helping a new team member integrate. The one Ryan had marked as either authentic kindness or perfect deception and had not yet determined which. Are you certain? Ryan asked. Certain enough to bet lives on it. Kane showed his tablet. Signal traces, timestamps, device signatures. All of it pointed to a sat phone registered to Mark Collier. Does Briggs know? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. Ryan thought about this. Thought about the implications. Thought about what happened next if they confronted Collier here in the middle of Yemen with hostile territory on all sides in a mission that required every operator to function as a team. Thought about what happened if they did nothing and Collier kept transmitting and the enemy kept getting updates and the trap kept getting tighter. We tell Briggs now, Ryan said, before we move any closer to the compound. They found Briggs near the lead vehicle studying maps. Ryan approached with Kane, spoke quietly. Sergeant Major, we have a situation. Briggs looked up, read Ryan's face, set down the map. Talk, Kane explained, showed the data. Briggs listened without interruption. When Kane finished, Briggs looked at Ryan. What do you recommend? We confront him now, before the next transmission. And if he resists, then we secure him and complete the mission with 5 operators instead of 6. Briggs nodded slowly. Santos, Garrett, on me. They approached Collier as a group, not threatening, just purposeful. Collier saw them coming, set down his water, stood, smiled. What is up, Sergeant Major? Briggs did not return the smile. Mark, I need to see your sat phone. The smile faltered. My what? Your satellite phone, the one you used to send 3 encrypted transmissions to hostile forces operating in the area we are about to enter. Collier's face changed. The friendly mask slipped. What showed underneath was not guilt. It was fear. I can explain. You have 30 seconds. Collier looked at the team, at Briggs, at Ryan, at Kane with his tablet showing evidence that could not be argued with or explained away. His shoulders dropped. The fight went out of him like air from a punctured tire. They have my wife. Silence. The wadi held its breath. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called. The sound was sharp and lonely in the afternoon heat. Explain, Briggs said. Collier sat back down, put his head in his hands. When he spoke, his voice was raw. 3 months ago, Sarah disappeared. I got a call. They said they had her. Said if I did not cooperate, they would kill her. Said all I had to do was send position updates when my team deployed. Just coordinates, just timing. Nothing that would get anyone killed. Just enough to make operations more difficult, make us less effective. Who called you? Ryan asked. I do not know. Distorted voice, encrypted line. They knew things about my family. Things no one outside JSOC should know. They knew about Sarah's sister in Phoenix, knew about our mortgage, knew about the medical bills from her surgery last year. They knew everything. Garrett spoke up. And you believe them? You did not verify, did not report it? Collier looked up, eyes red. They sent me a photo, Sarah tied to a chair, holding yesterday's newspaper. How do you verify that? How do you report that without triggering a response that gets her killed? Briggs crossed his arms. So you sold out your team. I gave them position updates. That is all. I did not give them routes or tactics or anything that would compromise the mission. Kane interrupted. You sent 3 transmissions, but we detected 4. The wadi went quiet again. Collier looked confused. What? 4 transmissions, Kane repeated. You sent one before we deployed, one after we loaded vehicles, one after we crossed the border. But there was a 4th transmission 90 minutes ago updating enemy forces with our current position and our planned approach route through the wadi system. Collier stood. That was not me. I only sent the 3. Position and timing, that is all they asked for. Ryan stepped closer. Who asked you, Mark? Who gave you the orders? I told you, I do not know. The voice was distorted, but they used an authentication code. What code? Collier hesitated, then said it, Shepard. The word landed like a stone in still water. Ripples spread. Ryan felt his chest tighten. 3 years. 3 years since Nightfall. 3 years since he had heard that code word used in operational context. 3 years since the compound burned and his teammates died, and someone on a radio had used that exact authentication to coordinate the ambush that killed 7 good men and left Ryan alive to carry the weight of their deaths. Who else knows that code? Briggs asked Ryan. People who should not exist anymore, Ryan said. People who died in Yemen 3 years ago. Santos spoke up, her voice careful. Or people who did not die, people who survived. Ryan looked at her, young, smart, seeing connections that others missed. What are you thinking, Corporal? I am thinking that if someone is using a code from a dead operation, either they stole it or they were part of it. And if they were part of it, maybe they are not as dead as everyone thinks. Kane pulled out his tablet, started working. I can analyze the 4th transmission, compare encryption patterns, see if it matches Collier's device or came from somewhere else. Briggs made a decision. Do it, fast. We are 20 minutes from mission start, and I need to know if we have 1 mole or 2. Kane worked in silence. The team waited. Ryan watched Collier, watched a man who had made a choice that seemed impossible in the moment and was now living with consequences that made the impossible choice look simple by comparison. How do you judge a man who betrayed his team to save his wife? How do you balance loyalty to brothers in arms against loyalty to the person you promised to love and protect? Ryan did not know, was glad he did not have to make that call. Kane looked up. The 4th transmission did not come from Collier's phone. Where did it come from? Briggs asked. I cannot tell exactly, but the encryption signature is different. Military grade, JSOC level, and the routing is more sophisticated. Whoever sent the 4th transmission has access to resources that Collier does not have. Ryan felt pieces clicking together. Someone is using Collier as cover, using his transmissions to hide their own, making it look like he is the only leak when actually there is someone else, someone with higher access, someone who can coordinate operations at a level that Collier cannot reach. Briggs absorbed this, looked at Collier. You are confined to the vehicle under Santos's guard. If we make it out of this, you will face charges, but right now I need every operator I have. So you do exactly what I say, when I say it, or I will leave you in this desert. Clear? Collier nodded. Clear. Santos, take him to the truck. Secure his sat phone and his weapons. Santos moved. Collier went with her. The rest of the team gathered around Briggs. Garrett said what everyone was thinking. If Collier is not the only mole, who is? Someone on this base, Kane said. Someone with JSOC clearance. Someone who knows Shepard protocol. Ryan pulled out his own tablet. Accessed classified files he was not supposed to have, but had acquired through channels that existed specifically for operators who needed information that official channels moved too slowly to provide. Found what he was looking for. Operation Nightfall. Personnel roster. 8 names, 7 marked KYA, 1 marked classified. He showed Briggs, this is the team I served with 3 years ago. All of them are officially dead, except me. Briggs scanned the list. Jackson, Martinez, Sullivan, Chen, Williams. 3 more names I do not recognize because they are redacted. Chen and Williams died in the initial ambush, Ryan said. I saw them go down, but Jackson, Martinez, and Sullivan were alive when I was ordered to extract. I tried to reach them, could not get through the enemy fire, was ordered to leave or die with them. I left. The weight of that admission hung in the air. Ryan had carried it for 3 years, had whispered their names every morning in shooting ranges, in empty rooms, and places where no one could hear the sound of a man trying to make peace with decisions that could never be unmade. Briggs said, if they were alive when you left, they could still be alive now. Or they could be dead, or they could be something worse. What is worse than dead? Ryan thought about code words and shadow programs and operations that did not exist in any official record. Turned, broken, used. If someone captured them and had 3 years to work on them, there is no telling what they might have become. Kane interrupted. Cross, I am picking up something on the radio spectrum. Multiple signals. American military frequency. What kind of signals? IFF tags. Identify friend or foe, old ones. The kind we stopped using 2 years ago. How many? 3. Ryan felt his blood go cold. 3 IFF tags. 3 men. 3 teammates who were supposed to be dead, but whose identification beacons were transmitting from inside the compound they were about to assault. They are in there, Ryan said quietly. Jackson, Martinez, Sullivan, they are in that compound. Briggs looked at him. You are certain? 3 tags, 3 men, it is them. Garrett spoke up. Then the mission just changed. We are not just grabbing a terrorist facilitator. We are extracting American POWs. Briggs pulled the team closer, lowered his voice. Listen up. What Cross just told you is classified above all our pay grades. Those men have been missing for 3 years. Officially, they are KIA. If they are alive and if we can get them out, it changes everything. But it also means we are walking into something bigger than a standard snatch and grab. Someone wants those men to stay exactly where they are. Someone with enough power to classify their status and enough resources to make sure no one looks for them. That someone might be the same person using Shepard protocol, might be the same person who sent the 4th transmission. We do not know. What we do know is that from this point forward, we trust no one outside this immediate circle. Clear? The team acknowledged. Ryan felt something shift inside him. For 3 years, he had believed his teammates were dead, had mourned them, had carried their names like stones in his chest. And now, suddenly, impossibly, they were alive. We're waiting in a compound 20 minutes away. We're breathing the same air and occupying the same planet and existing in a state that Ryan had believed was permanently close to them. He thought about Sophie, about guardian angels, about promises to come home, about the weight of leaving men behind and the cost of trying to bring them back. We get them out, Ryan said. Whatever it takes, we get them out. Briggs nodded. Then let us move. Clock is running. The convoy drove the final 20 minutes in silence. Every operator knew what was coming, knew that the enemy had been getting updates about their position and their approach and their timing, knew that someone wanted this team to walk into an ambush, knew that the only question was when and where and how bad it would be. The Wadi system appeared ahead. Deep cuts in the landscape where water had once run and would run again when the rains came, but for now existed as dry channels that provided cover and concealment for anyone moving through hostile territory. Exactly as Ryan had planned, exactly as he had briefed. The perfect approach for a team that wanted to reach a target without being seen. Or the perfect kill zone for an enemy that knew exactly when and where that team would appear. They dismounted the vehicles, moved on foot. Ryan took point. The wadi walls rose 15 feet on either side, narrow at the bottom, wide enough for single-file movement. Perfect defilade from observation. Perfect trap if the enemy had high ground. 400 meters from the compound, Kane signaled. The team stopped. Kane moved forward to where Ryan stood, scanning the terrain ahead. Problem? Ryan asked. I am picking up enemy radio traffic. They know we are in the wadi. They are repositioning to the high ground. How many? At least 20, maybe more. Ryan looked up at the wadi walls, looked ahead to where the channel curved and disappeared around a bend, looked back at his team. 5 operators, 6 if you counted Collier under guard, against 20 or more enemy fighters who had been told exactly where to wait and exactly when to shoot. The ambush was set. The only question was whether Ryan could see it coming fast enough to do anything about it. He keyed his radio. All call signs, we are about to walk into contact. Enemy has high ground. We need to move through the kill zone fast or find another route. Briggs responded. What is your recommendation? Ryan studied the terrain, ran calculations. There was no other route. The wadi was the only approach that provided any cover at all. Going around meant exposing the team to open desert where they would be visible from kilometers away. Going back meant giving up on the mission and leaving 3 POWs in enemy hands. We move forward, Ryan said, but we move prepared for contact. Spacing intervals. Cover every angle. First sign of enemy fire, we suppress and maneuver. Briggs approved. Execute. They moved. 50 meters. 100. The wadi curved. Ryan held up a fist. Everyone stopped. He heard something. Not a sound. The absence of sound, the particular silence that came when birds stopped singing and insects stopped buzzing because predators were near. He looked up, saw movement on the ridgeline. Small, quick. Someone pulling back from an observation position. Contact imminent, Ryan called. The RPG came from the left ridge. Streaked overhead, trailing smoke and fire. Detonated against the wadi wall behind them. Rock and dirt exploded. The pressure wave hit like a physical blow. Machine gun fire opened up from 3 positions. High ground on both sides and ahead, where the wadi narrowed. Bullets kicked up dirt and sparked off rocks and made sounds like angry hornets passing too close. The team moved without orders, each operator finding cover, returning fire, suppressing enemy positions with disciplined bursts that forced heads down and bought seconds to maneuver. Ryan identified the primary threat. Machine gun nest on the right ridge, controlling the approach. He signaled to Garrett, pointed. Garrett nodded, moved to angle for a shot. Ryan provided covering fire. Short, controlled bursts, conserving ammunition, making each round count. Garrett fired. The machine gunner went down. The gun went silent. But more fire came from ahead, from positions that had not revealed themselves yet, from an enemy that had been told exactly where to wait and had used that knowledge to prepare a defense in depth that would bleed the team dry before they ever reached the compound. Briggs made a decision. We cannot stay here. We push through or we die in this wadi. On my mark, everyone moves. Leapfrog, cover and move. Do not stop until we are through the kill zone. They moved, Ryan and Garrett providing cover while Briggs and Kane advanced. Then Briggs and Kane covering while Ryan and Garrett moved past them. Combat movement. The kind practiced 1,000 times until it became muscle memory that did not require thought or hesitation or anything except execution under fire. 200 meters through hell. Bullets everywhere. RPGs detonating. The sound of it all compressed into a continuous roar that made thinking impossible and reduced the world to immediate threats and immediate responses. They broke through, emerged from the wadi into dead space below the compound walls. The enemy fire slackened. They were in close now, too close for RPGs without risking the compound itself. Close enough that the high ground advantage disappeared. Ryan counted heads. 5 operators, all standing, all functional. Santos was with Collier at the rear vehicle providing security. That left the assault team intact and able to continue. Briggs on radio. Santos, status? Secure, we heard the fight, standing by. Maintain position, we are moving to the compound. Ryan looked at the walls ahead. Old construction, adobe and stone, 15 feet high, guard towers at corners. The kind of structure that had defended against tribal raids for centuries and was now being used to hold American prisoners and coordinate terrorist operations and serve as the epicenter of something much larger than any of them had understood when the mission was briefed. Kane pulled Ryan aside. The IFF tags. They are still transmitting. Signal is coming from the basement level, southwest corner. Can you tell if they are mobile? No, just that they are there, and they have been in the same position for at least 6 hours based on signal consistency. Ryan thought about this. Thought about men held in basement cells for 3 years. Thought about what that would do to the body, to the mind, to the ability to move or fight or recognize rescue when it came. We get them out, Ryan said again. Whatever state they are in, we get them out. They approached the compound, used tactics that Ryan had helped develop back when he was part of a unit that wrote doctrine for exactly this kind of assault. Speed, violence of action, overwhelming force applied at the critical moment before the enemy could organize a response. Garrett planted breaching charges. Small, precise, just enough to blow the door without bringing down the wall. The charges detonated with a sharp crack that was loud in the silence that had fallen after the Wadi firefight. They moved through, room by room, clearing with the mechanical efficiency of professionals who had done this so many times that hesitation was impossible, and mercy was a luxury reserved for after the shooting stopped. Enemy fighters appeared, were engaged, went down. The team moved past them. No time to secure, no time to verify. Just keep moving, because stopping in the middle of an assault was how you gave the enemy time to rally and organize and turn hunters into hunted. Basement stairs. Dark, narrow. The smell of it rose to meet them. Unwashed bodies, human waste, decay. The smell of men who had been kept in conditions that violated every convention of war and every basic standard of human dignity. Ryan went first. Night vision turned darkness to green. The stairs descended 15 feet. At the bottom, a corridor. 3 doors, all closed, all locked from the outside. The middle door had light coming from underneath. Ryan stacked on it with Briggs and Garrett. Kane covered the corridor. Ryan tested the handle. Locked, not electronically, just a simple bolt and padlock. Garrett shot the lock. The door swung open. Inside, 3 men. Ryan knew them immediately, even emaciated, even bearded, even changed by 3 years of captivity and versions of themselves that barely resembled the operators he remembered. He knew them. Would have known them in any condition, because you do not forget the faces of men you served with and left behind and mourned and carried in your chest like unhealed wounds. Jackson sat against the far wall, left leg splinted with what looked like pieces of broken furniture, face gaunt, eyes hollow, but alive. When the light hit him, he looked up, blinked, focused. Recognition came slowly, then disbelief. Ghost? His voice was a rasp, unused, damaged. Ryan crossed to him, knelt. It is me, Jackson. We are getting you out. Martinez was next to Jackson. Right hand wrapped in filthy bandages, missing fingers. The stumps had healed wrong, were infected. He stared at Ryan like he was seeing a hallucination that would disappear if acknowledged. You came back, Martinez whispered. I came back, Ryan confirmed. Sullivan was in the corner, sitting with his back to the wall, knees drawn up, rocking slightly. He did not look up when the door opened, did not respond when Ryan said his name, just kept rocking, just kept staring at nothing. Briggs entered behind Ryan, saw the conditions, saw the state of the prisoners. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed professional. Can they move? Ryan examined Jackson. Maybe with support, Martinez too, but Sullivan spoke. His voice was different from the others. Not raspy, not damaged, just flat, empty. There is no home. There is only the mission. Ryan froze, those words, that cadence. He had heard something like it before, in after-action reports from hostage situations, in psychological profiles of prisoners who had been broken and rebuilt into something else, in classified briefings about programs that turned captured operators into assets through methods that were never discussed in public and barely acknowledged in private. Sullivan, Ryan said carefully, do you know who I am? Sullivan looked at him. Eyes focused, present, but wrong. Like looking at someone familiar through glass that distorted their features just enough to make recognition uncertain. You are Ghost, operative designation from Operation Nightfall. You escaped. We remained. Shepard required it. The word hit Ryan like a bullet. What did you say? Shepard required it. Shepard always knows. Shepard provides purpose. Ryan stood, stepped back, looked at Briggs. Briggs had his weapon raised, not pointing at Sullivan, just ready, just prepared for what might come next. Sullivan has been turned, Ryan said quietly. Someone got to him, broke him, reprogrammed him. As if to confirm this, Sullivan stood, moved to the wall, pressed his palm against a specific stone. Something clicked. An alarm began to wail. Lights throughout the compound flickered and then blazed to full brightness. Garrett moved towards Sullivan. "What did you just do?" Sullivan smiled. It was the most disturbing thing Ryan had seen in 3 years of seeing disturbing things. "Shepard required notification of your arrival. I have complied." The compound came alive. Doors opening. Boots on stone. Voices shouting in Arabic and English. And the confused mixture that happened when forces from different backgrounds tried to coordinate under stress. Kane on radio from the corridor. "We are about to have company. Multiple hostiles converging on basement level." Briggs made a decision. "Garrett, secure Sullivan. Do not hurt him, but do not let him move. Ryan, get Jackson and Martinez mobile. We extract all three. I do not care what state they are in. We are not leaving anyone behind." Ryan moved to Jackson, got a shoulder under his arm, lifted. Jackson gasped in pain but held his weight on his good leg. Martinez stood on his own, swayed, steadied himself against the wall. "Can you walk?" Ryan asked. "If walking gets me out of this hole, I will crawl if I have to." Garrett had Sullivan restrained with zip ties. Sullivan did not resist, just smiled that wrong smile and said, "Shepard is here. Shepard has been here all along. You cannot escape what has already surrounded you." They moved into the corridor. Kane was at the stairs providing security. "We have maybe 90 seconds before they reach this level." "Then we move in 90 seconds, Briggs said. "Everyone up, now." They climbed. Ryan supporting Jackson, Garrett hauling Sullivan, who walked compliantly like a man being led to something he welcomed instead of feared. Martinez climbing on his own with determination that came from 3 years of waiting for exactly this moment. At the top of the stairs, gunfire erupted from the compound courtyard. Enemy fighters had rallied, were establishing positions. The direct route to the breach point was now covered by interlocking fields of fire that would cut down anyone who tried to cross. "We need another exit," Ryan said. Kane pulled out his tablet. Building schematics, downloaded from intelligence files, possibly outdated, possibly wrong, but better than nothing. "There is a service entrance on the east wall, used for deliveries. Opens to an alley that connects to the Wadi system 200 meters from our breach point." "Show me." They moved through the compound, avoiding contact where possible, engaging when necessary. The fighting was close and brutal, and everything that Ryan had trained for and everything he had hoped to never do again. But training won, discipline won. The team moved as a unit and enemy fighters moved as individuals, and that difference was the margin between survival and death. The service entrance appeared. Heavy wooden door, barred from inside. Garrett worked on the bar while the team provided security. Behind them, enemy forces were organizing, were coordinating, were preparing to overwhelm through sheer numbers what they could not match through training or tactics. The bar came free, the door opened. Beyond it, an alley, narrow, dark, empty. They moved through. Ryan first with Jackson, then Martinez, then Garrett with Sullivan, then Kane. Briggs provided rear security, closed the door, jammed it with a piece of debris that would buy them maybe 2 minutes before it was breached. 2 minutes to cover 200 meters through an alley that could become a kill zone if the enemy figured out their route before they cleared it. They ran, Jackson hobbling, Martinez struggling, Sullivan moving with easy grace that suggested his injuries were either less severe or less relevant to whatever he had become. Ryan supported Jackson while his mind raced through possibilities. Why had Sullivan been left in better physical condition? Why had he been positioned in that cell? Why had he triggered the alarm? The answer came like revelation. Sullivan was not a prisoner, he was a guard, had been placed there specifically to monitor the other 2 POWs, had been given just enough freedom to make his captivity look genuine while actually serving his captors. And when Ryan arrived, when the rescue happened exactly as someone had planned, Sullivan had done exactly what he was programmed to do. He had alerted Shepard. The alley opened to the Wadi. Santos and Collier were there with the vehicles. Santos had her weapon up. Collier was still restrained but alert. "Everyone in," Briggs ordered. They loaded. Jackson and Martinez in the back of the first truck. Sullivan secured in the second truck between Garrett and Collier. The team mounted up. Engines started. Ryan keyed his radio. "Santos, we are leaving hot. Enemy forces will be following. We need to reach the border before they organize pursuit." "Copy that. I will lead. You follow." The convoy moved. Fast. Too fast for the road conditions, but speed was the only advantage they had. Behind them, the compound was alive with activity. Vehicles starting, weapons firing into the air. The chaos of an enemy that had been surprised but was now organizing and would soon be pursuing. They drove for 20 minutes. The border crossing appeared ahead. Same checkpoint, same guards, but different now because the guards had radios, and the radios were broadcasting alerts about American operators who had just assaulted a compound and were fleeing towards Saudi territory. The checkpoint guards raised weapons, called for the convoy to stop. Santos did not stop. Drove straight through. The guards fired. Rounds hit the truck body, punched through metal. Ryan heard Jackson grunt in pain, turned, saw blood spreading across Jackson's shoulder. "We have wounded," Ryan called. "Keep moving," Briggs responded. "Medical when we are across the border." They crossed. Saudi side. The checkpoint guards here were different. Professional, military, allied forces who had been coordinated with in advance. They waved the convoy through, established a defensive perimeter. The Yemeni guards stopped at the border, did not cross, shouted and gestured, but did not pursue. The convoy did not stop until they were 5 kilometers inside Saudi territory. When they finally halted, Ryan was out of the truck before the engine stopped. Went to Jackson, applied pressure to the shoulder wound. It was through and through, clean, lucky. "You are going to be okay," Ryan told him. Jackson looked at him with eyes that had seen too much and survived too long. "I knew you would come back." Told Martinez, told Sullivan, told them Ghost never leaves men behind. Ryan felt his throat tighten. "I tried 3 years ago. Could not reach you." "You tried. That is what matters. You tried and you came back. That is more than I expected." Martinez appeared, leaning on Kane. "Is he okay?" "He will be," Ryan said. "We all will be." From the other truck, Sullivan called out, his voice calm, almost cheerful. "Shepard is pleased. The mission proceeds as planned." Ryan stood, walked to where Sullivan sat restrained, looked at him through the truck window. "What mission, Sullivan? What plan?" Sullivan smiled. "The plan that brought you here. The plan that reunited the team. The plan that Shepard has been running since the day Nightfall ended and you thought you escaped." Ryan felt ice in his chest. Who is Shepard? Shepard is purpose. Shepard is mission. Shepard is... A voice spoke from behind Ryan. Familiar. Authoritative. The voice of a man who had commanded operations and shaped careers and made decisions that sent men into darkness. "Shepard is me." Ryan turned. Standing 20 feet away, having emerged from a vehicle that had followed the convoy at a distance, was Colonel Harris, commander of Marine Special Operations, the man who had briefed this mission, the man who had approved Ryan's route, the man who had access to every classified file and every operational detail and every piece of intelligence that could be used to coordinate an ambush or manipulate an outcome or run an operation that officially did not exist. Harris had his sidearm drawn, not pointing at anyone, just ready, just prepared. "Surprised, Ghost? You should not be. After all, you taught me everything about field operations. When we served together before Nightfall, before I needed to disappear you and your team." Ryan's mind raced, pieces clicking together. Harris had been his commander, years ago, before JSOC, before the classified operations. Back when Ryan was just another operator and Harris was just another officer, and neither of them knew what they would become. "You sent us into that ambush," Ryan said. "I sent you into history, into legend, the ghost unit that never existed." Harris moved closer. "And now you have done exactly what I needed you to do. You found the POWs, confirmed they were alive, brought them to a location where I could retrieve them quietly without the complications of a formal rescue operation that would raise questions I do not want answered." Briggs stepped forward, weapon raised. "Colonel, stand down." Harris turned to him. "Sergeant Major, you do not have the full picture. These men are not POWs, they are assets. Part of a program that operates above your clearance level. A program that uses operators who officially died to conduct operations that officially never happen. Black budget, zero oversight, maximum deniability." "You are running illegal operations," Briggs said. "I am running necessary operations. Operations that keep this country safe. Operations that politicians and lawyers and oversight committees would shut down if they knew about them. Operations that require men who are willing to disappear." Ryan looked at Sullivan, at the wrong smile, at the eyes that showed programming instead of personality. You broke them, turned them into weapons. I gave them purpose, Harris corrected. Jackson and Martinez were harder to break, too loyal, too strong, so they stayed prisoners. But Sullivan understood. Sullivan saw the larger picture. He became what the mission required. Kane had been working his tablet throughout this conversation. Now he looked up. I have been recording everything, every word, uploading to secure servers. If anything happens to us, this goes to the Inspector General, the Senate Oversight Committee, and every major news outlet simultaneously. Harris smiled. Do you think that matters? Do you think I have survived this long by being careless, by leaving evidence? The files you are uploading are being intercepted by systems I control. The servers you think are secure are routing through nodes I own. There is no evidence. There is only what I allow to exist. Ryan calculated angles, distances, response times. Harris was 15 feet away, weapon drawn, experienced operator, would not hesitate if threatened. Behind Harris, 2 more vehicles had arrived. 4 operators exited, unknown to Ryan, wearing civilian clothes, carrying weapons, moving with the fluid competence of professionals. The numbers were bad. Ryan's team was exhausted, wounded, carrying 3 POWs who could barely function. Harris had fresh operators in superior position and complete operational control. But Harris had made one mistake. He had brought Ryan back to Yemen, had orchestrated this entire operation, had manipulated events to achieve his goal. And in doing so, he had shown his hand, had revealed the program, had exposed himself in ways that could be exploited if Ryan survived long enough to exploit them. What happens now? Ryan asked. Harris holstered his weapon. Now you have a choice. You walk away, take your team back to Camp Lejeune, file your report about a successful counterterrorism operation, accept a medal for rescuing POWs, live your life, raise your daughter, forget everything you learned here today. And if I do not choose that, then you become part of the program, another ghost in the system, another operator who officially died but serves a higher purpose. You mean another weapon you can control? I mean another patriot willing to do what is necessary. Ryan thought about Sophie, about guardian angels, about promises made to children who believed their fathers could protect them from anything. Thought about Jackson and Martinez sitting in a truck bleeding and broken after 3 years in hell. Thought about Sullivan smiling his wrong smile because something inside him had been killed and replaced with programming that made him happy to serve a man who had destroyed him. There is a third option, Ryan said. Harris raised an eyebrow, which is, I take Jackson and Martinez home. I get Sullivan the help he needs. I testify to every committee and every investigator and every authority that will listen about what you have done. And I spend the rest of my life making sure that programs like yours never destroy another operator. Harris sighed. I was hoping you would be reasonable. Ghost, you were always the best. But you were also always too moral for the work that actually needs to be done. He raised his hand. The 4 operators behind him raised their weapons. The shooting was about to start. Ryan calculated that he might be able to draw and fire before Harris's men killed him, might be able to take Harris with him, might be able to protect his team for the 5 or 10 seconds it would take for them to find cover. 5 or 10 seconds against 4 professional shooters, with wounded POWs who could not move fast in a team that was already exhausted from one firefight and could not sustain another. The math was not good, but sometimes math did not account for the variables that mattered most. And in this case, the variable was Kane, who had been working his tablet throughout the entire conversation, who had said he was uploading evidence, who Harris had dismissed as ineffective because the uploads were supposedly being intercepted. Kane looked up from his tablet, smiled. Colonel, you made an assumption. Harris glanced at him, which is, you assumed I was uploading to servers you control. I was not. I was broadcasting on an open channel to every news organization within satellite range, including Al Jazeera, including BBC, including CNN. Your confession has been streaming live for the past 4 minutes to approximately 200 million people worldwide. The color drained from Harris's face. You are lying. Kane turned his tablet around, showed the screen. Live viewer counts, comment sections exploding, news alerts triggering, the entire conversation, the entire admission, the entire program. All of it broadcast in real time to a world that was watching and recording and sharing. Harris's hand went to his sidearm, stopped, Realized that shooting Kane now would only confirm everything that had just been broadcast. Would make him not just a war criminal, but a murderer caught on camera in front of the entire planet. He lowered his hand, looked at Ryan. You have destroyed something you do not understand, something that was keeping people safe. I destroyed something that was destroying people, Ryan said. There is a difference. Sirens approached in the distance. Saudi military police responding to reports of armed confrontation near the border. Within minutes, the area would be flooded with authorities who would want answers and evidence and cooperation that Harris could not provide without revealing even more about his illegal program. Harris made his own calculation, decided, turned to his operators. We are leaving. They mounted their vehicles, drove away, east, deeper into Saudi territory, toward whatever extraction point Harris had prepared for exactly this kind of emergency. Ryan watched them go, did not pursue, did not fire, just watched. Briggs approached. We should stop them. No, Ryan said. We let them go. Let them disappear. Let the investigation find them if it can. Right now, we have bigger priorities, which are getting Jackson and Martinez to a hospital, getting Sullivan to a psychiatric facility, and making sure Kane's broadcast does not disappear from the internet before Congress has a chance to see it. Kane was already working. I am downloading copies, multiple redundancies, distributed across servers in 12 countries. Harris can try to suppress it, but by the time he shuts down one server, the file will have propagated to 1,000 more. This is not going away. Santos called from the truck. We have incoming, Saudi military convoy, 3 vehicles, 2 minutes out. Briggs organized the team. We cooperate, we explain, we request immediate medical evacuation for wounded Americans. We do this by the book because from this moment forward, everything we do is going to be scrutinized by every authority in 2 countries. The Saudi vehicles arrived. Officers exited, demanded explanations. Briggs provided them, showed credentials, requested assistance. The Saudis made calls. Within 30 minutes, a military helicopter arrived. Medics loaded Jackson and Martinez. Sullivan went with them under guard. Ryan stood in the desert watching the helicopter lift off, watching it carry his teammates toward treatment and recovery and whatever came next for men who had survived 3 years in hell, only to discover that hell had been created by someone who was supposed to protect them. Kane approached. It is over. No, Ryan said. It is just starting. Harris will lawyer up. The program will be investigated. Congress will hold hearings. The media will dig. And somewhere in all of that, the truth about what was done to those men will either come out or be buried under classification and national security claims. You think they will bury it? I think they will try, but I also think that for the first time in 3 years, people are asking the right questions, and that matters. Briggs joined them. Colonel Harris is officially a fugitive. His command has been revoked. NCIS has issued warrants. The program is being shut down. Ryan nodded. What about the other operators, the ones Harris said were part of the program? Being located and recovered. It will take time, but it is happening. And Collier will face charges. But given that he was being blackmailed and that his information was being used as cover for a larger operation, the charges may be reduced. He will not walk away clean, but he might walk away. Ryan thought about Sarah Collier, about a wife who had been used as leverage to force a good man into bad choices. Find her, make sure she is safe. Already being done. They stood in silence for a moment. 3 operators who had gone into Yemen hunting one truth and had found something much larger. Something that would reshape how the military thought about oversight and accountability and the cost of programs that operated in shadows so deep that light could not reach them. Ryan pulled out his phone, still no signal, but he looked at Sophie's picture anyway, at her smile, at the guardian angel project she had made, at the faith she had that her father would come home. I need to make a call, he said. Briggs nodded. We have a satellite phone in the vehicle. Use whatever you need. Ryan walked to the truck, dialed the number, waded through the international routing. Heard his mother's voice. Mom, it is Ryan. I am okay. Can I talk to Sophie? Sounds of movement. Then her voice. Bright, happy, completely unaware that her father had just been part of something that would be studied in military academies and investigated by congressional committees and debated in classified briefings for years to come. Daddy, where are you? Far away, sweetheart, but I am coming home soon. Did you help people? Ryan looked at the helicopter disappearing over the horizon, at the Saudi officers coordinating with Briggs, at Kane uploading files that would bring down a program and end careers and maybe, just maybe, prevent the next generation of operators from being disappeared into programs that officially did not exist. Yeah, baby, I help people. Are you a guardian angel like I drew? Ryan smiled, first real smile in days. I'm trying to be, I'm really trying. You are, Daddy, I know you are. They talked for 5 more minutes about school, about friends, about things that had nothing to do with Yemen or classified programs or men who had been broken and turned into weapons. About the normal life that waited for Ryan if he could just survive long enough to get back to it. When they hung up, Ryan sat in the truck for a long moment, closed his eyes, felt the weight of 3 years lift slightly. Not gone, never fully gone, but lighter, more bearable. Kane appeared at the window. We have transport arranged. Wheels up in 2 hours. We will be back at Camp Lejeune by tomorrow night. And then you testify, and Harris gets hunted, and the program gets investigated, and somewhere in all of that, maybe we make sure this never happens again. Ryan opened his eyes, looked at Kane. You believe that? You think testimony and investigations will actually change anything? I think broadcasting a confession to 200 million people makes it harder to sweep things under rugs. I think public pressure sometimes forces changes that internal pressure cannot. I think we have a chance. Maybe not a guarantee, but a chance. Ryan nodded. Then let us take that chance. Let us make sure Jackson and Martinez and Sullivan and all the others Harris used did not suffer for nothing. The sun was setting over the Saudi desert, the same sun that had set over this desert for millions of years. The same sun that would set long after everyone involved in today's events was gone. Perspective mattered. Scale mattered. Understanding that individual battles were part of larger wars that stretched across generations. But so did the individual battles. So did the moments when one person decided to stand up or speak out or refuse to accept that programs like Harris's were necessary or inevitable or beyond challenge. Ryan Cross had made that decision, had broadcast the truth, had chosen testimony over silence and accountability over complicity. Now he just had to survive long enough to see what that choice produced. The helicopter that would carry them to the transport plane arrived. They loaded, lifted off. The desert fell away beneath them. Yemen disappeared behind them. Ahead, somewhere across an ocean, America waited. Home waited. Sophie waited. And in congressional hearing rooms, and military courtrooms, and classified briefings, the reckoning was just beginning. The transport landed at Camp Lejeune 48 hours after the helicopter lifted off from Saudi Arabia. Ryan Cross had not slept more than 3 hours total during that time, had spent the flight watching the ocean pass beneath them at 30,000 feet and thinking about men in hospital beds and investigations that were already beginning and the particular weight that came from knowing you had done the right thing, but could not yet calculate the full cost of doing it. The tarmac was crowded when they arrived, not with the usual maintenance crews and logistics personnel that met every military flight. This was different. Official vehicles, men in suits, news vans staged at the perimeter fence with cameras pointed at the aircraft before the wheels even stopped rolling. The story had broken while they were in the air. Kane's broadcast had gone viral. Every news organization on the planet was running the footage of Colonel Harris admitting to running an illegal shadow program that turned captured operators into weapons. Briggs stood at the front of the aircraft, addressed the team before the door opened. What happens next is above all our pay grades. NCIS will want statements. JAG will want depositions. The media will want interviews. You cooperate with the first two. You say nothing to the third. Everything goes through official channels. Everything gets documented. We do this by the book because the book is the only thing that protects us when the people we are testifying against have lawyers and resources and every reason to destroy our credibility. Ryan listened, understood, had been through this before in different contexts with different stakes. The aftermath of operations was sometimes harder than the operations themselves because bullets were clean and bureaucracy was not. The door opened. They descended. A man in a gray suit waited at the bottom of the stairs. Mid-50s, thinning hair, eyes that had seen enough classified briefings to know when something was about to explode and when to position yourself away from the blast radius. He extended his hand to Briggs. Sergeant Major Briggs, I am Deputy Director Carmichael from NCIS. We need to debrief your team immediately. Briggs shook his hand. Understood. Where? Secure facility. Base JAG office. Transport is waiting. They were loaded into vehicles, driven across base to a building that Ryan had passed dozens of times but never entered. Inside, conference rooms had been converted into interview spaces. Each team member was separated. Each would give their statement independently. Standard procedure, the kind designed to catch inconsistencies and lies, and the small deviations that happen when people coordinated stories instead of telling truth. Ryan was placed in a room with a table and 3 chairs and a recording device that was already running. Carmichael sat across from him. A woman in navy dress uniform sat to Carmichael's right, commander rank, JAG insignia. She introduced herself as Commander Walsh. Legal counsel, recorder of depositions that would be used in courts-martial and congressional hearings and investigations that would stretch for months. Warrant Officer Cross, Carmichael began, let me be clear about something from the start. You are not under investigation. You are a witness. Possibly the most important witness we have. What you say in this room will determine whether we can prosecute Colonel Harris and dismantle the program he built. So I need you to be completely honest, completely detailed, and completely willing to testify in public if required. Ryan nodded. I understand. Good. Then start at the beginning. When did you first learn about Shepard Protocol? Ryan talked for 4 hours, told them everything. Operation Nightfall, the ambush, the 7 dead teammates, the 3 who survived, the classification of his service record, the assignment to Team 3 under a false premise, the discovery of Collier's transmissions, the 4th signal that came from a different source, the compound, the POWs, the confrontation with Harris, Kane's broadcast. All of it recorded, all of it documented, all of it entered into a record that would follow Harris for whatever remained of his life and career. When Ryan finished, Carmichael leaned back in his chair. That is one hell of a story. It is not a story, it is what happened. I believe you. The question is whether a court-martial board will believe you, whether Congress will believe you, whether the public will believe you when Harris's lawyers start attacking your credibility and suggesting you have ulterior motives. Commander Walsh interrupted. Director, Warrant Officer Cross has the broadcast. He has Kane's recordings. He has 3 POWs who will corroborate the program's existence once they are psychologically stable enough to testify. The evidence is overwhelming. Evidence can be explained away, Carmichael said. Broadcasts can be taken out of context. Recordings can be edited. Clues can be discredited as unreliable witnesses suffering from trauma and manipulation. I am not saying that is what will happen. I am saying we need to be prepared for Harris to fight this with every resource he can marshal. Ryan understood, had known from the moment Kane hit broadcast that exposing the program was only the first step. Proving it existed in a way that survived legal challenges and political pressure and institutional resistance to acknowledging that something this dark had been operating within the military structure would be harder. What do you need from me? Ryan asked. Your testimony. Your willingness to stand in front of cameras and committees and courts and tell this story as many times as it takes until someone with enough authority decides to act on it. You have it, Carmichael nodded. Good, because there is something else you should know. Colonel Harris has disappeared. We have warrants. We have alerts at every border crossing and airport. But as of right now, he is in the wind, and until we find him, the program he built remains a threat. Ryan absorbed this. Harris had resources, had contacts, had spent years building networks that existed specifically to support operations that could not be acknowledged. Finding him would not be simple. What about the other operators, Ryan asked? The ones Harris said were part of the program, the ones who officially died but were being used for black operations. We are locating them. 23 names so far, spread across 4 branches. Some are willing to come forward. Some are too broken to participate. Some are still loyal to Harris and the program. It is complicated. And Jackson, Martinez, and Sullivan? Commander Walsh answered this one. Jackson and Martinez are at Walter Reed, stable, receiving treatment. They will recover physically. Psychologically, that will take longer. Sullivan is at a secure psychiatric facility. The deprogramming process has begun, but we do not know yet how successful it will be. He was held longer, subjected to more intensive conditioning. We may not get him back. Ryan thought about Sullivan's smile, about the flat voice saying Shepard provides purpose, about a man who had been turned into something that served his captors more loyally than he had ever served his country. Keep trying. He deserves that much. We will. The debrief ended. Ryan was released with instructions to remain available for follow-up interviews and to prepare for potential congressional testimony within the next 30 days. He walked out of the building into afternoon sun that felt too bright and air that felt too clean after 4 hours in a windowless room, talking about things that had happened in darkness. Kane was waiting outside, leaning against a vehicle, working his tablet because Kane was always working his tablet. He looked up when Ryan approached. How did it go? They believe us. Now they have to prove it in ways that survive legal challenges. They will. I've been uploading additional evidence, communication logs, financial records, travel manifests, everything I could pull from classified databases before Harris's people locked me out. They locked you out? Tried to. I have backdoors they do not know about. Military cybersecurity is good, but it is not that good. Ryan almost smiled. You are going to end up in prison for hacking if you are not careful. Only if they catch me, and only if they want to prosecute the person who exposed a war crime. The optics on that would be terrible. They stood in silence for a moment. Two men who had gone into Yemen hunting one thing and had found something much larger. Something that would define the rest of their careers and possibly the rest of their lives. What happens now? Kane asked. Now we wait. Wait for the investigation. Wait for the courts-martial. Wait for Harris to surface or be found. Wait for the bureaucracy to process what we handed them and decide what to do with it. And while we wait, Ryan thought about this. While we wait, I go see my daughter. He drove to Wilmington that evening. 3 hours on highways that carried him away from military bases and classified programs in the weight of testimony that had not yet been given. The radio played country music that he did not listen to. His mind was elsewhere. Ahead. Toward a house where a 7-year-old girl waited who did not know that her father had just been part of something that would be studied and debated and investigated for years. He pulled up to his mother's house as the sun was setting. The porch light was on, warm yellow against the gathering dusk. He could see movement through the front window, shapes passing, normal life continuing in the same patterns it had followed while he was gone. He sat in the car for a moment, let himself feel what it meant to be here. To have survived, to have kept the promise he had made on 100 phone calls and 1,000 quiet moments when Sophie asked if he would come home, and he said always and meant it even when the odds suggested otherwise. The front door opened. His mother appeared, saw his car, put her hand over her mouth. Even from the driveway, he could see her shoulders drop with relief. She turned and called into the house. A moment later, Sophie appeared, still in her school clothes, hair in the same ponytail she wore every day. She looked at the car, looked at him through the windshield. Then she ran. Ryan was out of the car before she reached him, caught her as she launched herself at his chest, arms around his neck, face pressed into his shoulder, making sounds that were half laugh and half sob and completely unfiltered joy. Daddy, 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 you are home. You are really home. He held her, lifted her off the ground, felt her weight and her warmth and the realness of her that made everything else feel distant and manageable and worth whatever it had cost to get here. I am home, baby. I am really home. She pulled back, looked at his face, touched his cheek like she was confirming he was solid and present and not just another dream. You were gone so long. I counted the days. 37 days. I know, I'm sorry. But you came back. You always come back. Always, he promised. His mother approached, hugged him while Sophie clung to his side. Welcome home, Ryan. Thanks, Mom. They went inside. Sophie pulled him to her room to show him projects from school. Artwork on the walls, science fair volcano that had won first place, book reports and math tests, and all the small documented pieces of a life that had continued while he was in Yemen, fighting battles that she would not understand for years and might never fully know about. On her desk, the Guardian Angel project, construction paper wings, face drawn to look like him, caption in careful 7-year-old handwriting. My daddy, the Guardian Angel. He picked it up, studied it, felt something in his chest that was too big for words. Do you like it? Sophie asked. I love it. Mrs. Patterson said, Guardian Angels protect people. That is what you do, right? You protect people? Ryan knelt to her level, looked her in the eyes. I try to, sweetheart. Sometimes I succeed. Sometimes I do not. But I always try. Did you protect people on your trip? He thought about Jackson and Martinez in hospital beds, about Sullivan in a psychiatric facility, about Collier, whose life had been turned upside down by blackmail, about Kane, who had risked everything to broadcast truth, about a team that had walked into hell and walked back out because they had trusted each other and refused to leave anyone behind. Yes, baby, I protected people. Then you are a guardian angel, just like I said. She hugged him again. Ryan held her and let himself believe for just a moment that maybe she was right. That maybe doing the right thing in impossible situations was enough. That maybe coming home to the people who loved you was the only victory that mattered in the end. They had dinner, simple food, chicken and vegetables and rolls that his mother had made that afternoon. They sat around the table like families did, talked about ordinary things, school and friends and plans for the weekend. Sophie told stories that went in circles and never quite reached a point, but were perfect anyway because they were hers. After dinner, Ryan helped with dishes while Sophie did homework at the kitchen table. His mother dried while he washed. They worked in comfortable silence until she spoke. They are saying things on the news about some kind of secret program, about a colonel who disappeared. They are not naming names, but I know it is connected to you. I can tell. Ryan kept washing. I cannot talk about it, Mom. I am not asking you to. I am just saying that whatever you did, whatever you are part of, I am proud of you. Your father would be proud of you. Ryan's father had been a Marine, had served in Desert Storm and later in Mogadishu, had come home from both places different, changed, had spent the rest of his life trying to reconcile the man he had been before with the man he became after, had died 10 years ago without ever fully succeeding. Ryan had joined the military partly to understand him and partly to honor him, and partly because he did not know what else to do with the particular combination of skills and temperament that made him good at things most people never had to think about. Thanks, Mom. Are you in trouble? No, I'm a witness, not a defendant. Will you have to testify? Probably. Will it be dangerous? Ryan thought about Harris in the Wind, about a program that had operated in shadows for years, about people who had enough to lose that they might do desperate things to prevent exposure. I do not know, but I am being careful. She touched his shoulder. You come home to that little girl. Whatever happens with investigations and testimony and all the rest of it, you come home to her. She needs you more than the government does. I know. Do you? Because I have watched you deploy and come back and deploy again for 7 years. I have watched you choose duty over family every time the choice came up. I am not saying that is wrong. I am saying that at some point you have to decide what kind of father you want to be. The kind who is always gone doing important things, or the kind who is here doing ordinary things that matter just as much. Ryan set down the dish he was washing, looked at her. What are you saying? I am saying you have options. The military does not own you. You can retire. You can take a civilian job. You can be here every night for dinner and every morning for breakfast and every moment in between. You have earned that choice. The question is whether you will make it. They finished the dishes in silence. Ryan thought about what she had said, about choices and priorities and the difference between what you told yourself mattered and what actually mattered when you stripped away everything except the people you loved and the time you had left to love them. At bedtime, Sophie asked him to read to her, the same book she had been reading since she was 5. A story about a girl who went on an adventure and came home and realized that home was the best adventure of all. Ryan had read it hundreds of times, could recite parts of it from memory, but he read it again anyway because she asked and because reading to your daughter was one of those ordinary important things his mother had been talking about. When he finished, Sophie was mostly asleep, eyes closing, fighting it because she always fought sleep like it was an enemy trying to steal time she could spend awake. He pulled the blanket up, kissed her forehead. Daddy? Yes, sweetheart? Will you be here tomorrow? I will be here tomorrow. And the day after? I will be here as long as you need me. I will always need you. Ryan felt his throat tighten. Then I will always be here. She smiled, eyes closed, asleep before he finished the sentence. He sat in the chair next to her bed for a long time after that, watching her sleep, listening to her breathe, thinking about guardian angels and promises and the particular grace that came from being exactly where you were supposed to be, doing exactly what you were supposed to do. His phone buzzed. Text message from Briggs. Congressional hearing scheduled. 3 weeks. You, me, Kane testifying. Prepare accordingly. Ryan typed back. Understood. Another message. This one from Kane. Found something in Harris's financial records. Wire transfers to offshore accounts. Millions of dollars. He was not just running operations. He was profiting from them. Ryan stared at the message. Added another crime to the list. Another charge that would be filed if Harris was ever found and brought to trial. Another piece of evidence that the program was not just illegal but corrupt. He put the phone away, did not want to think about Harris or testimony or investigations while sitting in his daughter's room watching her sleep. Those things could wait until tomorrow. Tonight was for being dad, for being the guardian angel she believed in, for being present in the small moments that added up to a life. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Days spent preparing testimony with AG lawyers who rehearsed questions and answers until they were polished and airtight. Nights spent in Wilmington with Sophie, helping with homework, cooking dinner, reading bedtime stories, living the normal life that had always been waiting, but that he had never quite reached for because duty kept calling and he kept answering. Jackson and Martinez were released from Walter Reed. Both came to Camp Lejeune for medical follow-up and to give their own depositions. Ryan met with them in a conference room that had been secured for sensitive discussions. Jackson looked better, had gained weight, moved without the limp that had made every step painful in the compound. But his eyes were different, carried shadows that had not been there 3 years ago. "Cross," he said when Ryan entered, extended his hand. Ryan shook it. "Good to see you walking." "Good to be walking. Doctors say the leg will heal completely. 6 more months of physical therapy and I will be back to full function." Martinez stood next to him, right hand still bandaged but healing. "They are talking about prosthetics for the fingers. Say I might regain 60% functionality. That is good news." "It is something." Martinez looked at the floor, then back up at Ryan. "We heard what you did. The broadcast, the testimony you are preparing, taking on Harris and the whole program. It needed to be done. Most people would have walked away," Jackson said. "Would have taken the easy path, stayed quiet, protected their career." Ryan thought about the shooting range, about names whispered in darkness, about 3 years of carrying weight that never got lighter no matter how many miles he ran or how many rounds he fired. "I could not walk away. Not from you, not from what happened." Martinez nodded slowly. "We owe you, more than we can ever repay." "You do not owe me anything. You survived. That is enough." "Is it?" Jackson's voice was quiet. "Sometimes I wonder if surviving was the easy part. Living with what we became in that place, what they tried to make us, that is harder." Ryan understood, had seen it in their faces in the compound. The particular damage that came not from physical torture, but from psychological breaking. From being made to question who you were and what you believed and whether the person you thought you were had ever really existed at all. "You are still you," Ryan said. "Damaged maybe, changed definitely, but still the men I served with. Still the operators who had my back in a dozen firefights before Nightfall. That does not go away just because someone tried to take it from you." They talked for another hour, compared notes, aligned their statements, made sure that when they sat in front of Congress, their stories would corroborate each other in ways that were consistent without being rehearsed. Truth did not need rehearsal. It just needed to be told clearly and completely and without the embellishments that gave lawyers ammunition to attack credibility. Sullivan was different. Ryan visited him at the psychiatric facility 3 days before the hearing. The facility was clean and modern and designed to look more like a retreat than a hospital. But the security was tight and the doors locked from the outside, and everyone who worked there had the careful practiced calm of people who dealt with minds that had been broken in ways that bodies never could be. Sullivan sat in a common room, staring out a window at gardens that were maintained by patients as part of their therapy. He looked up when Ryan entered, recognized him, smiled. It was not the wrong smile anymore. It was just tired, worn out. The smile of someone who had fought a long battle and was not sure yet whether he had won or lost. "Ghost," Sullivan said. "Just Ryan now. Ghost was a long time ago." "Not that long, 3 years. That is not very long when you measure it against the rest of your life." Ryan sat in the chair across from him. "How are you doing, Sullivan?" "Better. The doctors are good. They are helping me separate what is real from what was programmed. It is slow, but it is working." "That is good." "Is it? Sometimes I am not sure. The programming gave me purpose, took away the doubt and the fear and the weight of making choices. Now I have to carry all of that again. I am not sure I remember how." Ryan understood, had seen it before in men who had been prisoners, who had adapted to captivity by surrendering parts of themselves that made captivity harder to bear, who found that freedom was not always easier than imprisonment because freedom required carrying weight that captivity had removed. "You will remember," Ryan said. "It takes time, but you will remember." "Will I testify?" Only if you want to. Only if the doctors say you are ready. Sullivan looked back at the window, at the gardens, at something beyond them that Ryan could not see. I want to. I want to tell people what Harris did, what the program did. I want them to know that we were not volunteers. We were prisoners who were broken and rebuilt into weapons. That matters. That needs to be said. Then we will make sure it gets said. They sat in silence for a while. Two men who had survived the same nightmare in different ways, who had come out the other side damaged but not destroyed, who were trying to figure out what came next when the mission was over and the enemy was defeated and all that remained was the work of putting yourself back together. The congressional hearing was held in a chamber that had hosted testimony from generals and admirals and cabinet secretaries. The kind of room designed to intimidate and impress in equal measure. High ceilings, mahogany panels, rows of seats for spectators and press and all the people who made democracy function by watching and recording and holding power accountable. Ryan sat at a table facing the committee. 18 senators and representatives, both parties, serious faces, prepared questions, staff members behind them whispering advice and passing notes, and managing the political calculations that happened whenever truth intersected with power. Briggs sat to Ryan's left, Kane to his right. Behind them, Jackson and Martinez in dress uniforms, observing, ready to testify when called. Sullivan had been deemed not ready by the doctors, but his deposition had been entered into the record. His words would be heard even if his voice was not. The chairman called the hearing to order, explained the purpose. Operation Nightfall, the shadow program, the illegal detention and use of American operators for black operations that violated every standard of military justice and international law. The disappearance of Colonel Harris and the ongoing investigation into the scope of his activities. Then he turned to Ryan. Warrant Officer Cross, you have been sworn. Please tell this committee in your own words what happened in Yemen 3 years ago. Ryan told them, spoke for 40 minutes without interruption, laid out the timeline, the ambush, the deaths, the survivors, the classification of the incident, the discovery 3 years later that his teammates were alive and being held as prisoners, the confrontation with Harris, the admission that the program existed and had been operating for years. He spoke clearly, factually, without emotion or embellishment. Let the truth carry its own weight because truth properly told did not need decoration. When he finished, the questions began. Some were genuine attempts to understand what had happened. Some were hostile challenges designed to discredit him. Some were political theater meant for the cameras and the constituents watching at home. Ryan answered all of them the same way, with facts, with clarity, with the patience of someone who knew that this was not about winning arguments, but about creating a record that could not be ignored or dismissed or buried under classification. 6 hours later, the hearing concluded. The chairman thanked the witnesses, promised a full investigation, committed to ensuring that programs like the one Harris had run would never operate again. Whether any of that would actually happen remained to be seen. But it was a start, and sometimes starting was enough. Ryan walked out of the chamber into the hallway where press waited. Cameras, microphones, reporters shouting questions that he did not answer because Briggs had been clear about talking only through official channels. But one reporter got through the scrum. Young woman, serious eyes, notebook instead of a recorder because she was old school. She asked a question that cut through the noise. Warrant Officer Cross, why did you do this? Why expose the program when you could have stayed quiet and continued your career without complications? Ryan stopped, looked at her, thought about Sophie and guardian angels, and promises made to 7-year-olds who believed their fathers could protect them from anything. Because someone had to, he said, and because the men who were in that program deserved to have their story told. That is all. He kept walking. Behind him, the reporter wrote it down. That quote would be in tomorrow's papers, would be repeated in analysis and commentary, would become part of the record. The drive back to Wilmington took 4 hours. Ryan made it in 3.5, was home before dinner. Sophie was in the front yard when he arrived, playing with a neighbor's dog. She saw his car and ran to him like she always did, like he had been gone for days instead of just since morning. Did you do something important today, Daddy? I testified in front of Congress. Was it scary? A little, but you did it anyway. I did it anyway. She took his hand, led him toward the house. That is what guardian angels do. They do important things even when they are scary, Mrs. Patterson told us. Mrs. Patterson is a smart teacher. I know. That is why I listened to her. They went inside. Dinner was already made. His mother had cooked. The table was set. Everything was ready for a normal family meal, in a normal house on a normal evening, in a life that Ryan had been trying to protect for 7 years, but had never quite let himself fully live. After dinner, after dishes, after Sophie was in bed and the house was quiet, Ryan sat on the front porch with his mother. They drank coffee and watched the street and listened to the sounds of a neighborhood settling in for the night. "What happens now?" she asked. "Investigation continues. Harris is still missing. The program is being dismantled. Operators are being located and recovered. It will take years to fully resolve." "And you? What happens to you?" Ryan thought about this. About Briggs offering him a permanent position on the team. About JSOC wanting him back for more classified work. About opportunities to continue doing what he was good at in places that needed him. And he thought about Sophie. About being there when she woke up and when she went to sleep, and for all the small moments in between that added up to a childhood. "I'm retiring," he said. His mother looked at him, surprise on her face. "You are serious?" "I am serious. 20 years is enough. I have given enough. Sophie deserves a father who is here, not one who is always gone to doing important things somewhere else." "What will you do?" "I do not know yet. Something that lets me be home. Something that does not require clearances and deployments and living with secrets that I cannot share. Something normal." She reached over, squeezed his hand. "Your father would be proud of you, not for the testimony or the rescue or any of the heroic things. For this, for choosing your daughter." They sat in silence until the coffee was gone and the street was empty and the night had fully settled in. Then Ryan went inside, checked on Sophie one more time. She was sleeping with the Guardian Angel project on her nightstand, where she could see it first thing when she woke up. He stood in the doorway and made himself a promise, the same promise he had been making for 7 years. To come home, to be present, to be the father she believed he was. But this time he was going to keep it in a different way. Not by surviving deployments and walking through doors after months away, but by not leaving in the first place. By being here. By choosing the ordinary important things over the extraordinary dangerous things. By being a guardian angel who guarded from right here, at home, where he belonged. 2 weeks later, the news broke. Colonel Harris had been found, not by military investigators or law enforcement, by journalists who tracked his financial records to a compound in Argentina where he had been living under an assumed name. Argentine authorities arrested him. Extradition proceedings began. He would stand trial, would face a court-martial for crimes that carried decades of prison time. The program was officially shut down. All 23 operators located and recovered. Some went to hospitals, some to psychiatric facilities, some to normal lives with new names and therapy and the slow work of rebuilding identities that had been taken from them. Collier was cleared of most charges, received a letter of reprimand, was allowed to remain in service. His wife Sarah was found safe, had been in protective custody the entire time. The threats against her had been real, but she had never been in the danger Collier believed. He transferred to a training command, somewhere he could serve without the operational stress, somewhere he could rebuild trust. The team remained intact. Briggs continued as Sergeant Major. Santos earned her sergeant stripes. Garrett and Kane stayed on. They ran in operations and trained new operators and became the kind of unit that survived scandals and emerged stronger. And Ryan retired, quietly, without ceremony. Just signed papers and turned in gear and walked away from 20 years of service with nothing to show for it except medals he kept in a drawer and memories he carried in places where drawers could not reach. He took a job teaching tactics at the community college. Part-time, enough to pay bills, not enough to consume life. Spent his mornings working, spent his afternoons with Sophie, helped with homework, attended school events, was there for the small moments that he had been missing. 6 months after the testimony, Sophie came home with a new project, second-grade art class. Make a portrait of your hero. She had drawn him, not in uniform, not with a weapon, just sitting on the porch drinking coffee, just being dad. The drawing was simple, crayon and colored pencil, a stick figure man in a chair, a coffee cup, a porch railing, stars in the sky above, and at the bottom in her careful second-grade handwriting, the words, "My hero dad." He is here. Is this okay? She asked. Mrs. Patterson said heroes can be anyone who helps people, and you help me every day. Ryan looked at the drawing, at the simple lines and bright colors in the complete absence of anything except a man being present for his daughter, at the three words that mattered more than any medal or commendation or official recognition ever could. He is here, not was, not will be, is, present tense, current reality, the state of being that mattered most. It is perfect, baby. She beamed, pinned it to the refrigerator next to the Guardian Angel project and all the other documented pieces of a childhood that was happening right in front of him because he had finally decided to watch it instead of hearing about it later. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Ryan sat on the porch alone, pulled out his phone, scrolled to a message from Jackson, the first message since the testimony. Sullivan is doing better. Doctors say he might be ready to transition to outpatient care in a few months. Martinez got his prosthetics, learning to use them. Says he wants to open a gym when he retires. Train veterans. Give them a place to go that understands. Thought you would want to know. Ryan typed back, thanks for the update. Tell them I said hello and that I am proud of them. Jackson responded immediately. They know, we all know. What you did, what you sacrificed, we know. Ryan put the phone away, looked up at the stars. The same stars he had looked at from deserts and mountains and oceans. The same cold light that had witnessed every mission and every choice and every moment when he had chosen duty over everything else, because that was what he thought being a good man required. But sitting here now, he understood something his father had never quite managed to articulate in the years before he died. That duty came in different forms. That service meant different things at different stages of life. That the hardest battles were sometimes the ones you chose not to fight, because fighting them meant losing something more valuable than any victory could provide. He thought about his father, about a Marine who had come home from Desert Storm and Mogadishu carrying weights that never showed up on any scale, who had tried to be present for his family while still being deployed in his mind to places that would not let him go, who had died still fighting battles that had ended years before. Ryan had inherited that struggle, had carried it for 20 years. Had believed that being a good Marine and being a good father were the same thing because both required sacrifice and discipline and commitment. But they were not the same thing, could not be the same thing, because one required you to leave and the other required you to stay. One demanded that you put mission first and the other demanded that you put a 7-year-old girl first. And eventually you had to choose which kind of man you wanted to be. Ryan had made his choice, had chosen Sophie, had chosen home, had chosen to be the kind of father who was present instead of the kind who was perpetually preparing to deploy. And in making that choice, he had finally understood what his own father had been trying to do, had been fighting to achieve, had died before accomplishing. The reconciliation of the warrior and the father, the integration of the man who protected and the man who loved, the understanding that sometimes the greatest act of courage was not charging into battle, but sitting still and being exactly where you were needed most. Ryan pulled out the small notebook he had been carrying for 7 years, the one where he wrote names every morning in shooting ranges and empty rooms. He opened to the first page, looked at the names written there in his own handwriting. Jackson, Martinez, Sullivan, Chen, Williams, and the 2 others whose names had been redacted even from his private record. Operators who had died so far into classified operations that their identities had been erased along with their missions. He drew a single line through each name, not crossing them out, not erasing them, just marking them as accounted for, as alive or honored or remembered, as no longer requiring the daily ritual of whispered remembrance because they had been brought home or laid to rest or given the acknowledgement they deserved. Then he closed the notebook, put it in a drawer, did not throw it away because forgetting was not the goal. But he did not need to carry it every day anymore, did not need the weight of it pressing against his chest, reminding him of failures and losses and all the things he could not change. He had done what he could, had exposed the program, had brought his teammates home, had testified and fought and survived. Now it was time to do something different, something that looked less like heroism from the outside, but felt more important from the inside. It was time to be dad, full-time, completely, without deployment schedules or classified missions or the constant pull of duty calling from somewhere else. It was time to be the guardian angel Sophie had always believed he was, not by fighting distant battles, but by being here, present, available, real. The stars above Wilmington looked the same as stars everywhere Ryan had served. Same constellations. Same cold light traveling across years and distance to reach a planet that barely registered their existence. Perspective mattered. What looked small from one angle looked infinite from another. From up there, looking down, Ryan Cross was just one person in one house on one street in one city. Insignificant, forgettable. But from inside that house, looking out, he was everything. Was the father who came home. Was the promise kept. Was the guardian angel who had finally learned that the most important things to guard were right here. Always had been, just waiting for him to notice. He went inside, locked the door, turned off the lights, checked on Sophie one more time because he could and because she was there and because tomorrow he would wake up in the same house and be there when she woke up. And that was a gift he would never take for granted again. In the morning, they would have breakfast together. He would drive her to school, would be there when she got home, would help with homework and make dinner and read bedtime stories and do all the small, ordinary, important things that made up a life worth living. And somewhere in congressional hearing rooms and military courtrooms and psychiatric facilities, the work would continue. Justice would be pursued, programs would be shut down, men would be recovered. But Ryan's part in that was done. His testimony was given. His service was complete. What remained was not duty to country or unit or mission. What remained was duty to the little girl who had drawn him sitting on a porch drinking coffee, who had called him a guardian angel not because he fought battles, but because he was there, who had written "He is here" at the bottom of a crayon drawing and given him the only recognition that mattered. She deserved a father who understood that the greatest act of courage was not walking into fire. It was walking away from it. It was choosing to stay home. And Ryan Cross, after 20 years of service and 7 years of promises made from thousands of miles away, had finally learned the difference. He was home. He was staying. And that was enough. Thank you for watching Ryan's story. This one hit different for me. A warrior who spent 20 years serving only to discover the real battle was choosing to stay home. For those who've served, when did you realize that sometimes the hardest mission is the one where you stand down? Ryan walked away from everything he knew to be there for his daughter. Not everyone gets that choice. Not everyone makes it if they do. What would you have done in his position? Drop a comment below. And if stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe. More stories coming soon.